Jimmy, allow me to ask you a question. You ready?
Always, Jake.
This is a question you get a lot from people when you're talking about sport. A lot's the wrong word, but it's not an original question. It's a typical, bar top conversation starter, or in this case, Tuesday afternoon, glorious July conversation starter on Sports Talk Radio. But it does segue into a local topic. Would you rather, Jimmy, could give me the sport of we'll say four. Give me the four sports that you would most want to be playing professionally at the highest level.
Basketball, football, baseball, and soccer. You said top
so
four?
Basketball.
Sorry, okay.
So basketball. Would you rather be Jimmy Cook?
Yeah.
And I realize that this, the Boston Celtics won the NBA title this year. Would you say that means, and I know that for this year, yes, that's the answer. But in this window, this 5-year era, whatever, would you say Boston is the preeminent franchise? Is it the dynasty? Is it the top, the cream of the crop? Or do you think to yourself, well, that's only because, Giannis was sort of what? So give me the franchise that you would consider to be like the one that has seemingly over the next 5 years multiple cracks at championships. Would you go with Boston because of Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum?
I would not go with Boston. It would be, or in any other stretch of time, Jake, this would be a very easy question to answer. I would go with Denver.
So Denver.
But we've had parity the last 5 years.
Understood, but we'll go with Denver.
Sure.
Okay, so would you rather be, now give me a player for, what's the name of the kid out of Kansas that plays for the Denver Nuggets?
Brown? Yeah, Christian Brown.
Christian Brown,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So would you rather be Christian Brown and be the 9th or 10th guy that gets 12 to 14 minutes a game for the Denver Nuggets and wins 2 titles in the next 5 years? Or would you rather be the straw mixing the drink for the Washington Wizards? Would you rather be the guy in Washington or would you rather be the number 10 guy in Denver?
I'd rather be the guy.
Okay. For Tyrese Halliburton, he is the guy in Indiana. He's the straw mixing the drink. He is literally the ticker tape that is going to attract he is the lamp outside that attracts all the flies to it. Everything. He's a magnet towards talent wanting to come to Indiana. He's a great personality. He has an infectious smile. People love being around him. He's the ambassador to Indianapolis during the All-Star game. All of it. And so he's on Team USA. And yet on Team USA, he is relegated now, it would seem, to being guy number 12 or number however many are on that roster.
Guy 0 yesterday.
Guy 0. 0 minutes. Now, can you parlay being that guy that is not on-court impact guy into still being the guy that is recruiting people to come to Indiana and want to play with you just based on the stature of being on a championship level? And we don't know if Team USA is going to win the gold, but on a team and a platform like that is seen as the creme de la creme team and just being on that roster, is that enough for him? Or are we seeing a reality check, if you will, of Tyrese Halliburton's place amongst NBA elite?
No, I mean, you're still given, when you're on that team, the ultimate networking opportunity in the sport, especially if you are clearly a starter in your hometown team or in your residing franchise. I use that example to say Derek White's not recruiting people for the Celtics. Jason Tatum's doing that. He's also on Team USA. Derek White is a role player. Tyrese Halliburton is still a franchise player. He's still the leader of the Indiana Pacers. It is as good an opportunity as any to network and roster build. And if you want to say that is not something of value, then it's still getting an opportunity to play with, to further hone your skills, to further learn from, if you will, as he's still a very young player, fellow members of Team USA. So no, I would not say that there are other implications to Steve Kerr and coaching staff's decision for him to not play at all yesterday against Germany, but it's not something that would tarnish the opportunity or the honor of him being on this team.
In the United States win over Germany, 92-88, by the way, the one thing that I'm not saying that this is forever going to be, but going into these games, we said Anthony Edwards is going to be, he wants to be the guy. And remember, I said, guilty as charged, I said, I love that. Because a team like this that has this kind of talent needs to determine who the guy is late in games, and that's the go-to guy so that it's very clear. But sometimes, naturally, you can appoint those things and you can declare those things, but sometimes, naturally, it is just impossible to not see the cream rise in the alpha. I'll give you an example. I think I told you that during COVID, like when things first started opening up, so like early fall of 2020, one day I just decided that I was going to go to Claiborne Farms, where Secretariat was sired and then later retired, to see the horse farm. Several great racehorses were there, but Secretariat notably. And, you know, it was very, very cool. And they told a great story about Secretariat in his retirement had his own running stable. And he basically sat there and grazed and whatever else, and they fed him. And then one time, Sham was brought to Claiborne Farms to stud. And so they were curious, and they had in the running stable next to Secretariat was just lazily in the field, and they took Sham into the one that was divided by a running line, or by a fence line. And Sham and Secretariat made eye contact, and I'm sure part of this is like an urban legend story, but they tell it there, I mean, like very proudly tell the story, that Sham and Secretariat saw each other on the opposite sides of the fence, and Secretariat trotted down next to Sham, and then they looked at each other and both darted off and ran like 3 lengths of the fence line against one another. And then because of Secretariat's, I guess, rejuvenation by seeing another horse there, they decided to occasionally let other horses go into the stable area where Secretariat was in his retirement was housed. And they swear that when it was time to feed, that they would come out and feed, and all of the other horses of various ages would sit and wait, and eventually Secretariat would go and feed, and then once he began, then everybody else went and ate, because it was that clear to the horses who the alpha was. With Team USA, not to compare human athletes to racehorses, but I think we can try as much as we want to say that Anthony Edwards is the next guy that is the go-to guy, or Steph Curry is the big shot guy, whatever else. But in reality, you still have a group of players that branding and perception and realities of their career are difficult to dismiss. And it is very clear, even with this group, without saying it, that on the court, when the game is on the line and when the big moments are there, that they all defer to the alpha, which is LeBron James. And I know that's probably not a popular narrative, and I know people are tired of...
It's not a narrative. It's factual.
Yeah,
watch the
exactly.
games, right? Like, it's not.
It is.
I know people here are annoyed by it.
He's been the guy for 2 decades.
Yeah.
And I know that people want to diminish his greatness, and I get that. And there's a lot that goes into it, and there's probably there's great polarization with him. I don't necessarily understand that. But the reality is, with this particular team, LeBron is, when the games have been at any point where they need to hit the nitrous button, he is their nitrous button. He's the guy that elevates, and he's 39 years old. And maybe it's good for a Tyrese Halliburton to be able to simply sit and observe that, because one would hope that he is the guy that maybe is not LeBron James, but he is going to be the alpha of the Pacers for a very long time.
Here's my only caveat or issue with that, because I don't disagree. And I'm sure to some extent, Tyrese Halliburton, maybe not fully, because his mentality is to be a winner, to be a highly gifted competitor. But I'm sure there is a level of, man, this is great to be on Team USA. But you look up and down the minutes distribution and, like, I'm sorry, 25 minutes for Devin Booker is too many. Like, it just is. Derek White, 13 minutes. I mean, that's not insane, but that's part of the realm of shared minutes you would have liked for Tyrese Halliburton. There's been calls, and it wasn't as pronounced yesterday, but it certainly was against South Sudan, of Joel Embiid and his role on this team and how many minutes that he should have. So I agree with part of that, the part about it's LeBron's team. It's clearly LeBron's team. The fact that it is LeBron's team shouldn't impact and doesn't directly impact Tyrese Halliburton. It's the larger aspect of when you look up and down this roster. I'm not saying that. Look, it's clear that Nigel Hayes, Micah Potter, and Langston Galloway are names on this roster, right? Like they're there, they're filler pieces. Like they're probably not going to get significant minutes within this deep run to gold. Kevin Durant is an anomaly because he's still battling from injury, and Steve Kerr was pressed on that yesterday, and he says that he's going to play. He's going to be on the roster, and they expect him to be available at some point in their run to gold. So I'm not saying you should just be handing out charity minutes, and I don't think that's what it is with Tyrese Halliburton. I think he's earned a role on this team. But when you're giving Devin Booker and Derek White 38 minutes, and you're asking yourself, why is the offense convoluted at times? Why is it in a slump or a rut? It is because you have players that either aren't as gifted offensively of creating their own shot, a la Derek White, or you have somebody who, to a larger extent, is a ball-dominant guard that has to make his own shot in Devin Booker, and it kills rotation, and it kills lineup. That's what I'm more frustrated with, is you can ask for all the defense that you want if you're Steve Kerr, but if you're leaving Tyrese Halliburton out of this lineup when you clearly need a change of pace and change of scenery at times offensively, especially with that second unit, you're handcuffing yourself.
Let me play devil's advocate here on the minutes of Tyrese Halliburton. And by the way, good afternoon to you on a Tuesday. My name is Jake Query. That's Jimmy Cook. Eddie Garrison is here as well, apparently on his way to a Bengals pep rally. And I do like the Cincy hat, though. That's the one that benefits different organizations, including here in Central Indiana, correct?
Correct, from Ted Karras.
The shirt is a red shirt, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And then Ted Karras came out with, they had an Indy version of that hat as well, but that's a fundraiser for.
Very cool.
Including, with his cathedral ties, benefiting groups for children in Indianapolis. So that's cool. But it is Query and Company here on 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan, on a day when we're going to talk to Stephen Holder coming up at 2 o'clock. Stephen, of course, Colts getting underway, reporting tomorrow. Luke Easterling of Athlon Sports going to join us at 1 o'clock, taking a look around the NFL. But let me offer this perspective on Team USA and Tyrese Halliburton's donut in terms of minutes, okay? It is easy to look at that and say, what is Steve Kerr doing here? Especially when, as you just talked about, Devin Booker, for example, you would expect him to get more minutes than that. Derek White. Derek White's a late addition. Devin Booker's the one guy that I've said is interesting because I think he is a fabulous basketball player, but he is, I think, the most one-trick pony of anybody on that roster.
Correct.
And so he's pigeonholed a little bit on where he can help you. So let me offer you this. I recall when Market Square Arena was around. Back in my day, it was a great arena, brown curtain. But when Market Square Arena was around and Indiana basketball was at its absolute zenith, and I was a diehard IU fan, the way that you could get tickets for Indiana basketball, unless you were a season ticket holder at Assembly Hall, was they did a holiday tournament every year called the Hooser Classic. There was the Indiana Classic, which was in Bloomington, and then the Hooser Classic was here around the Christmas months. And it might have been the other way around, but there were two different classics. And typically, the Hooser Classic was Indiana playing against teams that were coached by former Knight disciples or friends of Knight, and they were usually smaller schools. Come see Indiana play Penn. Come see Indiana play Army. Come see Indiana play Miami of Ohio or UNC Wilmington, that kind of thing. And it was a real thrill to get tickets to go see those games. But this was before the Big Ten season began. So you knew that while you were excited to see the possibility of, the starting lineup of Daryl Thomas and Steve Alford and, Uwe Blop and whatever it might be, because it was before the Big Ten, you went and you were watching on the floor Chuck Franz and Cam Cameron and Dan Dockich and Courtney Whitty, which was fine. It was still Indiana, but it wasn't the group that you were used to seeing. But Knight and Indiana knew that these were games that while they counted, they weren't the Big Ten games. So you were rounding out, getting a look at different combinations and making sure that you were getting quality minutes for your entire roster to get them involved. And you didn't necessarily need to see a lot of Steve Alford or Ricky Callaway or Jay Edwards or Calbert Chaney because you knew what those guys could do. And you needed to see what you had in terms of your depth and also give them minutes so that if you suddenly needed to put them in late in a game against Illinois in February, they were used to being on the floor and the system. These games we look at, and because it's the United States against Germany or South Sudan or, Croatia, whatever it may be, you are saying to yourself, these are big games. It's not yet the actual Olympics. Is it possible, Jimmy, that what Steve Kerr is doing is saying, I know what I have in Tyrese Halliburton. I know what Tyrese Halliburton can do. But we lost Kawhi Leonard. Derek White was added late. So I need to see what Derek White brings to the table. And I need to see how Derek White can mold with Anthony Edwards or Bam Adebayo and see what he can bring to the table and get him kind of up to speed on what we try to run. And in addition to that, I need to see how Devin Booker, because he's the most one-trick pony, what minutes I can get out of him and what situations I use him. And for, obviously Durant's injured, but for Halliburton and other players, I don't need to see yet what they can bring to the table because I know what they do. Halliburton's hit big shots for them. Halliburton has changed pace when he's been on the floor for Team USA. Maybe they don't need that just yet. And maybe we see more minutes out of him once the games play. Now, is that me being optimistic or is that perspective?
Well, it's a point that you have brought up as this minutes removal has occurred. This is something that you had mentioned last week in regards to where his minutes were trending and the idea of Derek White being a part of this roster. And the natural logic of it is Derek White has not been involved with this team. It makes a ton of sense at the sacrifice of some minutes for Tyrese Halliburton in games that don't matter towards your quest for gold to get Derek White acclimated. Like, that's a perfectly reasonable thought, and I want to believe that. My issue is it's gone from a slight trickle down of Halliburton minutes to 0 minutes. To answer your question, which one is it? Well, we'll find out in 5 days because Serbia, it's great that Team USA pulled away from them in the second half, but that's arguably, I guess you could throw South Sudan in there now since they hung around too, but Serbia's arguably their toughest game in group stage, in what they'll have to go through, and that's their first game. July 28th, you will have the answer to your question. I hope so, Jake. I hope you're right. What I am fearful of is Kerr is banking more on, at least with White, I can't speak as much to Booker, but he is banking more on defensive prowess and defensive playmaking over offense. And that's why he is choosing White over Halliburton. That's the only real reason to do it, because that second unit, you're having Anthony Edwards be your dominant ball handler, and it's shown mixed to bad results when it's just Anthony Edwards trying to create for this team. When you add Tyrese Halliburton in there as your floor general, he doesn't care about getting his shot. He wants to set everybody else up. The offense moves so much smoother. So if that's the argument that he's just testing Derek White and getting him acclimated, I'm fine with it. But if the decision is instead favoring defense over offense, it's a calculated risk that if their defense continues to fold the way it has, you're putting more and more pressure on an older Team USA roster like LeBron James, like Steph Curry, to save you at the buzzer like they've had to do the last 2 games.
They put Jason Tatum in the second unit a little bit more yesterday and had him as the primary ball handler because Kevin Durant's going to come back eventually. It doesn't sound like he's playing against Serbia, though, on the 28th. But if he does come back, I mean, we're talking about Halliburton minutes right now. What are we talking about when KD's back? Like, someone from that starting 5 is getting bumped to the second unit.
He should be playing over Devin Booker and Derek White. I will die on that hill.
I think he should absolutely. And he may well, once games really matter, he may.
But to Eddie's point, yes, I get it. The Kevin Durant of it all is a fair point. Minutes are going to be docked across the board. It shouldn't just be this conversation. Joel Embiid's minutes should come down. There should be other players in that position group that are siphoned minutes to get Kevin Durant involved. I totally agree with Eddie on that point. But if it's zeros around the board, it should not be exclusive to Tyrese Halliburton. He is not the weak link in this lineup for me. He's just not. He's too good of a player.
What about this?
Offensively, unless Kerr's philosophical choice is defense with that second unit. Otherwise, Halliburton should absolutely be out
Do
there.
we know definitively that Halliburton is 100%?
I mean, other than what's been said publicly, no, we don't have a definitive answer on that.
That's way stretching, but is it possible they said, hey, I could use a couple days, if this was the Indiana Pacers and suddenly he was getting 0 minutes, we would immediately be asking about his hamstring.
You're saying a week ago, maybe he said, hey, I'm feeling a little tightness.
Yeah.
Let's dial it back.
I have no idea.
Maybe.
But is that possible?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, we speculated about his health status all of this past postseason, so it's certainly possible. But I would hope that at some point, and you'll have to forgive me here, both you and the audience, I don't know how full media availability works on this Olympic tour, but I would hope at some point he's asked a question, hey, what's going on with the minutes? And I know this is a tough, choose your own adventure answer for Halliburton, but I would hope if it's that, Jake, that his honest answer would be, I was feeling a little tight. I talked to Coach Kerr, and we dialed back the minutes a bit. I would hope he doesn't just keep that close to the chest if that was the case. But it's not implausible. We've made that call to action about his health towards the back end of the postseason when it looked like he wasn't taking over the same way that he did in the mid to early portions of the season.
By the way, are you fired up for Colts camp?
I am. I'm really
we're
excited.
Not constantly talking about Team USA and the minutes that Derek White's going to get?
I'm very excited about Colts camp. Are you?
I am. Again, I say this every year. I'm going to give an open disclaimer. We're going to do this like a group therapy session. Hello.
Hi, Jake.
Hi.
Didn't say his name yet.
Yeah, we're going to try this again, Eddie. Hang on just a second. Take two. I appreciate the enthusiasm. Hello. My name is Jake.
Hi, Jake.
I'm addicted to summer. I love the sound of kids playing in a pool off in the distance when you're driving on up Illinois and you know that you're near Rivie. I love lemonade stands. I love that the Perkins family, who I've never met before, in Terra Vista off 65th Street, had a couple of kids sitting with their mom in front of a peach stand selling peaches that fell from the tree in their front yard, 5 for $1. And when I bought it, the dad said, be sure to tell the nice man that Daddy enjoys his radio show. And I said, holy cow, seriously? That's very nice of you. And he said, no, it's awesome. And then he said, kids, say hi to JMV. And I said, no, I'm Jake. I love the fact that it gets dark at 9:30 or 10 o'clock at night.
Here.
I love that we wear shorts and T-shirts and that it takes far less time to get ready in the morning. I love summer concerts and sitting outside, and I love having a cold beer, watching traffic go by like on Broadapple Avenue or Mass Ave or Fountain Square, whatever it might be. I love everything about summer. The only hesitation I have, because I love the NFL, I remember as a kid sitting in my house watching week 1 of the NFL season and hearing, Irv Cross, let's get you caught up on what has been going on around the league during halftime. And dun, 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 dun. I'm a person of nostalgia. I love everything about all of that. I remember Palmer Eicher coming over to ask me to play kickball, and my mom saying, ooh, Jake's been waiting all summer for this, the opening day of the NFL season, Palmer. I don't think he's going to be able to come out and play. I love the NFL. I love Monday Night Football. I love all of it. My only hesitation with training camp is I love summer. And I love the State Fair, which we have tickets to give away today for the State Fair. I love the NFL. But when those two things start to merge, then all of a sudden it means that I can start to see up in the distance the little arrow saying merge to the right, because you're getting away from summer and now you're transitioning into fall. And my only hesitation with training camp is before you know it, you blink your eyes and you're scraping your windshield. It's my only hesitation.
Hot take on that regard. Is that why we know that the NFL is king in this country, right? It's undisputed at this point from any metric you want to measure it by. Is that why baseball's opening day is best? Because you've gotten out of the long winter, and because of all the seasonal elements that you
yes, I think so. I
set up there.
It's
because
a lot
you
like
have the
month
whole
of May.
summer in front of you.
I mean, honestly, like in Indianapolis on May 1st, when people are like, is it May yet?
Yeah.
Well, in reality, the month of May now for the 500 is like 10 days. But it's the fact that it is the beginning. You have awakened out of the depths of the summertime or the wintertime.
Yeah.
You have come out of the shadows now, and all of a sudden, the first time you hear a bird and you hear a lawn being mowed off in the distance, you're like, oh my gosh, it's here. We made it another year. And is there anything worse than that first Saturday in November when all of a sudden you're like, I feel like it's midnight, and you look at the clock and it's 8:15, and it all hits you at once?
It's terrible.
You know what I'm talking about? You're like, what in the world happened? Although I will say, and this is the one thing that actually bums me out about the Pac-10. There was something special about the Pac-12. What do you want to call it?
Pac-2 now. Pac-2 now is what we call it. But yes, I understand. I just like the joke of it. But go on.
But what I'm saying is what bums me out about the Pac-10 or the Pac-12 and its dissolve is the fact that there was nothing better than going out. And I mean, this will still be the case to a great extent, but I loved going out on a Saturday night, going to dinner, doing whatever, and then you get home at like 11:30 or 12 o'clock, and you turn it on, and there's still a game taking place, and you're catching the third quarter of Arizona and Oregon, and it's a crazy game and whatever else.
Pac-12 after dark.
Yeah,
what a time it was.
It was great. But that's my only thing about training camp is you blink, and all of a sudden, before you know it, you're no longer wearing shorts and a T-shirt, and you're not out having dinner at 9:30 at night, and the world is perfect. And kids are back at school this week. That's insane.
It's crazy. Like, it was I realized that this is the wrong forum for it, but since we're here, like, it was always August when I was growing up. I know that a lot of schools' schedules have changed. Like, I know that they've modified the way that the calendar works, and it's not a new thing. It's been the last, like, 5 or 7 years, but it was always an August thing when I was in school. So this whole July and kids are
it's crazy
back at it. Feels like a shortcut of summer.
I went to school the final week of July when I was in high school.
All right, well.
Seriously?
Can't help
it.
It's insane, right? But, like, and I get it. I mean, now you get 2 weeks off and fall break and all that. I get that. Speaking of, by the way, summertime, it's an anniversary in Indianapolis. And Jimmy is usually the one that wears some sort of clothing. Single thing he wears is, I think, Jimmy, does your wife lay out your clothing for you the night before, or do you do it?
Yes.
She does not. I do it myself.
But it always has a theme. Usually whatever you're wearing has a theme. You know, you come in and you're wearing some shirt, and I'm like, I've never seen that Banana Republic shirt before. And you're like, well, it's actually because Venezuela is playing in soccer today, and many people call it a Banana Republic. And I'm like, okay. But today it is I that has on the themed shirt. Neither of you guys noticed it yet. But it's an anniversary in Indy, and I'll tell you what it is next. Now, if you know anything about me, and it's probably to an annoying level, I realize, trust me, sometimes it even bothers me. I am a sucker for the history of Indianapolis and the different things that take place. Like, for example, it may be 40 years from now, somebody's like, do you remember when there was a large inflatable duck that floated down the White River? Which was fun.
Vaguely.
It happened today. A huge inflatable duck
Oh, really?
floated down the White River.
I thought you were talking me down memory lane.
No, I'm saying 40 years from now, people are going to be like,
wait, what?
Yeah,
Where
the
have I been?
Oregon Duck.
That's a good question. We were asking that an hour ago. The Oregon Duck.
Oh, that's awesome. Really?
For Big Ten Media Day, the Oregon Duck floating along the White River.
Now we can actually say, where have you been, Jimmy?
That's right.
This is amazing. I'm just seeing pictures of this now for the first time. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I will absolutely be talking about that 30, 40 years from now. Good work, Jake.
I don't know if you know or not, Jimmy, you might have heard Biden dropped out, by the way.
What?
Yeah. This just in, there's a huge duck floating along the White River in downtown Indianapolis. Was it the White River or the canal, actually? It's the White River, right? It's awesome. It's the Oregon Duck, right?
That's amazing.
Now, I don't know if did they turn loose a husky. This is obviously to let people know of the new entrance into the Big Ten for Big Ten Media Day. I don't know if there's a huge husky running around rampantly somewhere. Perhaps, I don't know. Are they giving out
Trojan horse anywhere?
Are they giving out prophylactics? A bunch of people are sneaking into a wooden horse on the circle. I don't know if that's to symbolize UCLA or USC, I mean. And then UCLA, I guess you could go to Sun King because something's brewing, right? For what it's worth.
Nice.
Thank you.
I had you covered.
But I don't know how long the duck floated around.
Is it? This is since I'm clearly new to the cycle here. Is it still there or is it gone now?
That's what I mean. I don't know how long it was floating around. I don't know. Eddie, do you know? Did it just do a quick?
I'm not sure.
It looks like, when you go to the state fair, which, by the way, again, we have tickets to give away later for the Indiana State Fair. You know the little rubber duckies that people put on Jeeps now?
Yes.
Or like at the state fair, they float around. And
do you have those, by the way?
No.
It's exclusive to the
correct, the Wrangler.
Wrangler Jeep.
False.
No, the etiquette of it is it's exclusive to the Wranglers.
False. I see it all the time now.
Okay.
Any Jeep. I see ducks.
Okay. I'm telling you the way it started and the original currency of ducks is my wife has a Jeep Wrangler is it's Jeep Wranglers. If it is expanded now, I'd rather be more inclusive.
Let me ask you this. If you because I had a Jeep Wrangler rental car recently. And now, do you think this might be spam? I'm getting a phone call right now from a telephone number that's one off of my number.
Yes, I would say that's probably spam.
I had a Jeep Wrangler rental car recently, and I drove it for 3 days, and no one left a duck for me. I was a little disappointed. But
did you purposely go in public spaces?
What's that?
Did you purposely go to public places to?
I was at a racetrack.
Okay.
But so if you drive a Jeep, do you have to have like a little surplus of the ducks on you in case you see a Jeep somewhere?
You should have, if you're being an active player of that game, yes, you should have some ducks ready to go.
And then you just leave it on someone's hood?
Yeah, a hood. You can put it in the little like door handle. You could put it on the what are they, the running boards. You could put it on the hood, like you mentioned, windshield. Some people if they have the doors out,
that's called the pond, right? If you put them on the windshield, that's then known as the pond.
But if they take the doors out, you can just set it on the seat.
Okay, now, and this all began, by the way, because a woman who had a Jeep apparently had like a road rage. Somebody yelled at her about something. So to try to play nice, she then went and had rubber ducks and put them on Jeeps and then posted, why she did it to try to brighten people's days, and it took off from there. It originally was just Jeep Wrangler. I think Eddie is correct. There now is some discussion that it has moved to different variations of Jeep. No one has done it for my Grand Cherokee, but
do you do the Jeep Wave, or is that exclusive to Wranglers as well?
I think that's also exclusive to Wranglers or Harleys.
I always feel a lot of pressure when I'm driving my wife's Jeep.
So when you have this duck thing, do you recycle them? In other words, do you pay them forward?
We have some, yes, yeah.
So if somebody leaves one for you, do you say, oh, and then you look across the parking lot and there's another Jeep Wrangler, so you go and you take the one that was gifted to you and you put it on another one?
Not usually that immediate. But so for example, she has I have gotten involved in the game itself because some of the ducks are really cool. They're not just standard yellow ducks. There's like a Superman duck or like a military duck. So some of those, the cooler ducks, kept to the right, so those aren't getting gifted forward. It's like those are unique. I want those to stay in the Jeep. Other ducks, it's like, okay, yeah, you can pay that forward. You can
Now,
send them along.
okay,
But if
what
you get a
about
really
this?
cool duck, yeah, you
What
keep
about
that.
this? And then we'll get to my anniversary here. What about this? If you have a Jeep that you have put in convertible mode, okay,
All right.
and you park at the grocery store and you've got all your ducks lined up on the dash, are those free game to other Jeep people to come?
No, I think that's theft.
Okay.
I think that's
Even though somebody else gave them to you.
correct, but it's a gift, and you would have ownership at that point, right? So I'd say, yeah,
So today is the 23rd of July, right?
I can confirm that. Apparently, there was
There's
a duck.
nothing overly significant about the 23rd of July, except for that. Not too long ago, I was going through my closet and found one of my favorite T-shirts. I love this particular T-shirt from the shop, Indy, who, by the way, we saw all the guys and gals from the shop. They were at our golf outing. This is one of the many shirts that I have from the shop. I love this particular gray knitness to it, if you want to call it that, whatever quality of this shirt. But this is for the National Sports Festival. The National Sports Festival, as you have heard me talk about probably ad nauseum on this program, but it was really the first launch pad for Indianapolis as a sports destination city. The National Sports Festival took place. There is still on Market Street one building, probably at about 200 East Market, that you can still see the painted facade on the side of the building of the calendar of events of the National Sports Festival. I mean, it's very faded. It's hard to make out. But the National Sports Festival, for lack of a better way of saying it, was the AAU National Championships for amateur athletes of the United States in a bunch of different sports. And the beauty of the National Sports Festival in 1982 in Indianapolis was not only was it the precursor for the Pan Am Games and everything that came after it, and for different headquarters of amateur sports coming to Indianapolis, where we were briefly known as the amateur sports capital of the world. We were only known as that briefly because that catapulted us into a professional sports destination city. But the National Sports Festival, and I still have a program at home from some of the games that I went to. Jeff George was part of the, I think, one of the football competitions in it. But I remember Kenny Barlow and Charles Barkley were on one of the basketball teams. But there were athletes that came from all over the country here in Indianapolis. This ad, which I'm going to have Eddie run, and I think we've played it on this show once before. This is not great audio quality because you're talking about a 43-year-old television commercial. But this ad, if you were around in 1982 in Indianapolis, you might have even been 5 years old and you don't even remember this. But when you hear this ad, and notably when you hear the completely psychotic and neurotic swimming coach at the end cheering on the swimmer, and I shortened this so you don't get the full version of the coaches encouraging their athletes and whatever else. But this is the ad that began running for the opening ceremonies of the National Sports Festival, which took place on July 23rd of 1982, I believe, at Market Square Arena. And then tickets went on sale for the National Sports Festival events that were sponsored by Merchants Bank with their little frog and Marsh Supermarkets. And let me tell you, this commercial ran, and I had to look this up because I didn't know if this was scientific or not. This commercial actually ran every 42 seconds on some media outlet in Indianapolis in this week of 1982. Here we go.
Tickets are now on sale for the National Sports Festival. Tickets are now available for each of the 33 sports and 150 different events. Get your tickets now at Market Square Arena and the usual ticket outlets. The National Sports Festival.
Good! You got it!
Now, I'm telling you, as soon as that crazy chant of "you got it" went out, anybody listening right now that was alive back then sang along with that little National Sports Festival. That commercial was on constantly. But anyway, happy anniversary, 42 years ago today. And what did we do to celebrate it? We inflated a huge Oregon duck and let it float all around the White River.
You got it!
You know what we should do? Now, if Eddie, can we merge together two great sounds of 1982 of preparing to qualify, followed by that woman saying "you got it" after you qualified?
Oh, give me like 30 seconds and I'll make it happen.
That'll be wonderful. If we could just imagine that you've got it's a rainy Saturday. Your mom just dropped you off at Castleton Square with enough money for a hot Sam pretzel, maybe a slice at Luca, and then you're going to go to Aladdin's Castle. You got a couple quarters slivering around in the pocket. You just got done playing around in Ms. Pac-Man, and now it's time to play a little pole position. And once you qualify and you lay down a hot lap, you say to yourself, you know what? I thought for sure I was going to lay down a lap like Howdy Holmes in the Jiffy Brownie mix, and lo and behold, I got it after this one. And so you hear the countdown of the fabulous pole position, followed by the totally neurotic swim coach cheering you on in your head, and this is how it would sound.
Prepare to qualify. You got it!
Hell yeah. Let's go.
Does that coach sound more like she's hyping somebody up or that she's yelling at a bank robber?
Oh,
Like
100% the latter.
Like,
And she's screaming maniacally. And throughout the previous part of the commercial, throughout it, she's like despondent over the terrible times being turned in by the swimmer that she's watching. And then at the end, all of the coaches are like, you've got it, good job. And then she just goes above and beyond. Now, 1982 also, just so you know, in case you're curious, do you know what movie came out that year, Eddie?
I'm going to guess Fast Times at Ridgemont High.
That is correct. Yes, Fast Times at Ridgemont High. So while swimmers were actually like when people were showing up at All-American Burger and they were saying to Jeff Spicoli, "All right, who's got the Buku Dolores today?" And then somebody was saying this back to them. That was thank you. That was in 1982. What a time to be alive.
Do we think, speaking of that, weird that you've set me up for this segue now, do we think that coach is still with us?
She probably, because she was only, I mean, how old does she look in that video, Eddie? 35 maybe?
Oh, boy. I'd have to go back and look.
I'd say so. I think everybody that was, it was kind of like the Pan Am Games. Everybody that was involved was from Indianapolis. It truly was amazing. I mean, I don't know if the actors that they used for that commercial. I do think that somebody had tweeted me at one point to say that they knew, I think, the track coach in the commercial. If we could get one of the actors that was in the commercial to call in, it'd be awesome. Now, we have no idea to verify that it's them. I don't know if there's like an IMDb page for the National Sports Festival commercials. My assumption would be not, right?
Were you sad to see the National Sports Festival shelved in 95?
Did it go away?
Uh-huh.
Now, here's what's funny about the National Sports Festival and the Pan American Games.
They said it changed due to geopolitical circumstances after the fall of the Soviet Union, and that they couldn't decide what the next direction of the event would be. So
I remember the Scarborough Peace Games. That also took place here, I think. And
also the Winter Olympics being staggered around the Summer Olympics didn't help.
I remember that as well, obviously. The 87 Pan American Games are the one that's funny to me because when you lived in Indy, we were the epicenter of everything, and it was on national TV, and the opening ceremonies were televised, and it was at the Speedway. And, I mean, it was like an Olympic event, and you're like, the whole world is watching us, and then literally, I don't know that I've ever heard of the Pan American Games since. And I think they still do them. But I have no idea, 91, 95, 99, 03, 07, 11, 15, 19, 23. I have no idea where the Pan American Games were held.
You know what today is, Jake?
July 23rd?
One of the 361 days in San Diego here in Indianapolis.
It is beautiful out, is it not?
Yes.
San Diego weather. Tomorrow's supposed to rain, though.
They were in Santiago, Chile last year.
I've been there twice last year.
And in 2027...
So has De La Fuente.
Actually, what they used
Peru.
When they were in Santiago, they actually used the Estadio Olímpica. Designed, by the way, not that building, but just across the street by Patrick Healy.
2027 was supposed to be in Colombia, but it was stripped due to failed contractual obligations as well as financial reasons. So now it's in Peru.
Really?
Yep.
Peru'd be cool to go to. Very cool to go to, I think. What do you think about LeBron James being the male athlete that will be the flag carrier for the United States entering into the Olympic Games in Paris?
I think it's cool. I think it's a great show of despite the minutes issues we've talked about, the connective nature of Team USA on the basketball side, that, all of his teammates, then fellow Olympians as a whole, participated in that vote. Were you as surprised as I was that there's never been a basketball player to do it before? The reason I guess I was surprised and I came off that take was because my wife had pointed out to me, usually it is or at least from when we've been watching the Olympics, I feel like it's someone that is more in a non-mainstream sport. Like basketball is, relatively mainstream. Sometimes it's swimming or gymnastics, something that outside of every 4 years don't get that type of love is usually how that has gone. So
Correct.
I was
a non-traditional sport, right?
So I was a little surprised by it, but no, I had no problem with it. He's one of the most tenured athletes in terms of age representing.
He's obviously
team.
the most famous athlete in
Yeah.
the games, right?
Correct. Yeah. No, I mean I had zero problem with it. I thought it was really cool. I thought the reveal of Steph Curry telling him about it, everything was pretty neat. I think it's a good choice.
Who is the official clother of the Olympics? Is it still Ralph Lauren?
Yeah. Yep.
So Nike doesn't have involvement?
Well, they do with so that's where we get tricky. I believe Ralph Lauren's lane is exclusively the opening ceremonies and the
Correct.
closing ceremonies,
Okay.
but the Team USA is a Nike. There was talks about why Jaylen Brown didn't make Team USA was because he's not a Nike guy,
Well,
and Derek White was,
the first example of that,
among other things.
I'll put this to you in trivia form. When it comes to seeing the power of the shoe companies' involvement in the Olympic Games and the promotion and the branding of athletes that are aligned with that shoe company and the controversy it can create. Do you remember the first example of that when we walked through a door that we were never going to walk back through? I'll tell you what that is on the other side, and we'll talk a little NFL. Luke Easterling joining us, top of the hour here on a Tuesday, San Diego edition, I think. We're landlocked, but I think it's still nice outside. Aquarian Company here on The Fan. Controversy. Quite the controversy. Early 90s were a funny time when it came to sports and predicting what we would be in 2024.
Did they have inflatable ducks on that prediction list or no?
That duck is awesome.
It's great.
How big? How tall? Where is that duck? Do we know that? So for those that are just joining us,
Where have you been?
thank you, Eddie. The Oregon duck. Somebody put a huge. Now, is it an inflatable duck or is it the world's largest plastic rubber duck?
Looks inflatable to me. Looks like something you would see out on Geist or like,
But it's massive.
Yeah, it's huge.
To celebrate Oregon, UCLA, USC.
It's awesome.
To celebrate the new members of the Big Ten. Oregon, I don't know if it was Oregon or the city of Indianapolis that unleashed a humongous, and when I say humongous, I'm talking multi-stories tall from what it looks on the pictures. I don't know if that's true or not. Inflatable Oregon duck floating along the White River.
It's the best I can do, YouTube chat. It's the best I can do for you.
I mean, it is awesome.
It's amazing.
The Oregon duck alone is awesome. Remember when he got in a fight with a Stanford tree?
Yes.
Awesome. Does he have a name? Do we know?
I think he does. I can't remember it.
Is it not just the Oregon duck?
Well, so I know this is my mascot knowledge. I don't know everybody's name. The only one I know off the top for certain is that Miami's is Sebastian, like the
correct.
But the Oregon duck itself, I don't know if it has a direct name like that because I've always referred to it as the Oregon duck. I think its official Twitter account is the Oregon duck.
Okay. Well, I mean that would.
And per its Wikipedia page, it is just the Oregon duck.
Okay.
Disney has never been happy with that duck, though.
So speaking of,
They call copyright infringement with Donald Duck.
really?
I won't read the whole thing, but it's based on Disney's Donald Duck, and there's. Oh no, correction. Never mind. It's not a.
What about Daffy? Daffy's better than Donald.
Let me
anyway.
rephrase.
In the world of ducks, Daffy is number one. The Oregon duck's probably number two.
I need
right?
to retract Oregon versus Disney controversy that I started. Apparently, Disney actually helped from the onset of this, so it's not an infringement thing.
Okay.
It was a partnership. Anyway, go on.
Speaking of the Pac-12, the Pac-10, whatever you want to call it, I vividly recall when I was at the University of Kansas and Jason Kidd was a Kansas commit. And at the 11th hour, everybody's like, holy cow, did you hear? That guy from Alameda, California, the number one point guard in the country, he's not going to Kansas now. What? Yeah, he's going now to Cal. What? I know he's from that area, but why? If you're a number one point guard, why would you leave Kansas to go to Cal? And everybody said, well, you're not going to believe this. It's because he likes their shoes better. What? What are you talking about? Cal wears Nike. And I think at that time, Kansas was Adidas or might have been Reebok or whatever, but it wasn't Nike.
I think they're still Adidas now.
And literally everyone was, JRP dorm were sitting around in the spring of 1992 saying, just because their shoes fit better and he likes the look of them better, that's the weirdest thing I've ever heard. And lo and behold, a few months later, the Dream Team, the team that was put together because John Thompson had completely butchered the way that he assembled the 88 Olympic team and had a bunch of Georgetown players on it, not literally, but a lot of players that just weren't overly exciting. Willie Anderson and Ricky Barry and players that didn't get it done. Flat out didn't get it done. The 88 Olympic team got beat, and they said, that's it. Enough is enough. We're going, and we're going to use pros. And the Dream Team came about. Karl Malone, Larry Bird, and Patrick Ewing, and yeah, they let Christian Laettner on because he was coming off of a dominant college run, and they wanted one amateur on there. Michael Jordan. And they were given Reebok sweats to wear for the Olympic ceremonies in Barcelona, Spain. And everyone was like, wait a minute. Jordan is the face of Nike, the Air Jordan. He can't wear Reebok. And Jordan said he wasn't going to wear Reebok. And it became a huge controversy. What in the world is going to happen? Everybody knew they were going to win gold. Jordan had won gold already in '84 in Los Angeles, but everybody knew they were going to win gold. And what are they going to do? And
I think they touched on this in The Last Dance, if I'm not mistaken.
they come out, and I think there were a couple of others that did it, but Jordan was the most noted. he came out and he wore an American flag that covered up the Reebok logo on his sweatsuit. And that Reebok jacket, by the way, was sold at auction recently for, I believe, $3 million.
Jeez.
But that was the first time that was in 1992, really the first time that we saw the solidification of marriage between athlete and apparel brand. Before that, sure, I'm not sitting here and being naive to the fact that there weren't contracts and identities and things like that. But the idea of an athlete not wearing something because it conflicted with a contractual obligation elsewhere was totally foreign to most people until it happened with Jordan and Barcelona in 1992, and now here we are.
You said how much that jacket go for?
Between it was estimated that it was believed to go between $1 and $3 million. I'm not sure what the final asking price was.
That's my reaction.
It went for auction a year ago.
That's
The Oregon Duck is awesome,
so
right?
Great. It's so great. I apologize to the terrestrial radio audience, but the Oregon Duck's great.
The Oregon Duck actually bought the jacket. Did you know that?
I didn't know that.
They said, cash or charge? He said, just put it on my bill. Okay. Thank you. We'll talk NFL, and we'll do it with...
Eddie's ashamed of you.
What's that?
Eddie's ashamed of you.
We'll do it talking with writers from Athlon next. Starting out the 1 o'clock hour with a little bit of somewhat breaking news in terms of the fact that this came out within the last 90 minutes or so. Eddie, go ahead. Big Ten Commissioner Tony Petitti, while watching the Oregon Duck float along the White River, announced that Indianapolis, partially because they are willing to have inflatable mascots rolling around in our navigable. I don't think it's a word, right?
I think that is.
Navigatable. Anyway, on our waterways, has announced that the Big Ten championship game for football will stay in Indianapolis through, at minimum, 2028.
To make myself feel better, navigable is a word. Able to be sailed on by ships or boats.
Navigable, right?
Or floating ducks, weirdly enough. It's in that definition.
There was a time where Indianapolis touted itself as the largest city landlocked by non-navigable waterways. It was the largest in the United States.
I heard that as a child. It was Al Michaels dropped that in during a Colts Monday Night Football game at some point. I'm sure other people did it, but I remember that.
Big thing that was taught like in the schools here in the 50s.
Yeah.
And, obviously now I think Phoenix has surpassed it, but nonetheless, it's still fun to say. Dallas apparently has a navigable waterway somewhere that must count because Dallas has always been bigger. Joining us now, and I'm sure thrilled to be doing so based on that segue, he is with Athlon Sports. Luke Easterling joins us on the Express Pro Tire and Auto Guest Line. Luke has recently written articles about each of the AFC South teams. So, Luke, I'm going to jump right into our non-navigable waters by asking this of you. When you look at Indianapolis, your overall impressions of the Colts in terms of how they slot within the AFC South and the rest of what is a jam-packed conference?
Yeah, I mean, for the record, if you guys want to segue me in with floating mascots in the waterways, I'm fine with that every time.
It's pretty awesome, isn't it?
I'll take that. Yeah, that's fine with me. But no, I think the AFC South landscape is really interesting because I think obviously you've got Houston at the top. We all assume with the rapid ascension of C.J. Stroud and what DeMeco Ryans has done there in his first season. I think everybody's picking them not just to win the South, but to be a real spoiler for some of those AFC teams that we're used to seeing kind of trying to challenge Kansas City. I think Houston has put themselves in there in terms of the hype and the expectation, the way they finished that season. But I think after that, it's really a free-for-all because you have three teams that still have enough questions to where they could be problems, right? And I think all three of the rest of those teams, Jacksonville, Indy, and Tennessee, each have talent and reasons why they could be the number 2 team if things go right for them and wrong for the other two. And I think if I had to pick, I'd still probably put Tennessee at the back of that pecking order just because we still don't know what they have in Will Levis, how the coaching change and everything is going to impact that. I really don't think they did enough in the offseason to address the offensive line, so I'm interested to see how that unit is able to hold up. Obviously, they've got some intriguing skill players. You can't rely on Derrick Henry in that offense anymore. But in terms of the Colts and the way they compare to them in Jacksonville, who, again, has talent but still questions, I think coaching matters, and I think the scheme and the rapport that Shane Steichen already has with his offense and the way things are moving there, the talent that they have on that side of the ball, I think the offensive line is going to need to step up. They're going to have to – I think they underachieved a little bit last year, and I think that unit needs to prove that they're as good as they can be. But obviously everything hinges on Anthony Richardson staying healthy. I think if he's able to do that, I am a huge believer in his upside and his future. I think he's in a great scheme to accent what he does well and allow him to develop. And I think he has the weapons around him to be successful. So I think they've got as good a chance of anybody as being that second best team in the South. And then the rest of the conference will determine whether or not that's good enough to make the playoff.
Luke, one of the things that's interesting to me, and I want your thoughts on this, and feel free to disagree with it by all means. For Houston and Indianapolis both, I think both franchises as of right now should be commended by this fact. They had quarterbacks that clearly showed something in their rookie year. Stroud, obviously, for further distance just because of the health. But instead of then saying, okay, we're good at the quarterback position and allowing that quarterback to kind of carry them moving forward, they continued to be aggressive by building pieces around the quarterback, not being too reliant on their skill set, but rather facilitating and continuing to aid it, which is something that I think Indianapolis got hurt by earlier with Andrew Luck in terms of the way that maybe they didn't facilitate around him. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
It does, and I think that's critical to a quarterback's success. I think that one of the things that always fascinates people like me, who's a draft-heavy guy and always has been, is what are the variables that cause a prospect to fail or succeed at any position at the next level. But when you transition, particularly at quarterback, what things contribute? It's more than just a player's talent. It's more than just what the quarterback can or can't do or does or doesn't do. It's what kind of supporting cast does he have in terms of the roster, and what kind of buy-in, support, what kind of schematic confidence does the coaching staff and the front office put around him to make sure that they do what they do well and play to their strengths, at least long enough to allow them to develop the parts of their skill set that aren't fully there yet, right? And so I think that is the best way to do it. I think teams are starting to understand, listen, if we feel like we hit immediately on a quarterback, like I have to assume Houston and Indy both feel that way, you have a 4 or 5 year window to build and use the rest of that salary cap space that you're not spending on your quarterback because he's on that rookie deal for that first 4 years with the 5th-year option for your first-round pick. You have to take advantage of that window, because if he's the guy 4 or 5 years down the road, you're going to have to pay him to be that guy, and that's a lot less money to spend on that supporting cast. And so you have to invert it and draft guys around them, so that's a little bit harder. Now is the time for them to go out and spend a little bit of money and do everything they can to build that supporting cast, because, again, I believe in both of those coaching staff. I think DeMeco Ryans in Houston, Shane Steichen in Indy both know what they're doing. I think they're great schematic guys. I think they're great leaders. And so they have that going for them. But if they can build and use that cap space that they have because it's on a rookie deal with your quarterback, that's how you build an immediate contender if you can take advantage of that window.
Luke Easterling is our guest, covers the NFL nationally for Athlon Sports. He joined us on the Express Pro Tire and Auto guest line. Luke, you'll have to forgive me for this, but when I look at the AFC South the last 5 seasons, it's been one of those divisions in football that's very hard to take seriously. Every time it looks like you're going to have a team that's going to separate and be the standard bearer for a division, like the Bills, like the Patriots of yesteryear, like the Chiefs right now, something happens to one of those teams. Rather they, fumble themselves away from a division title, or injuries happen, or a changing of the tide happens. You mentioned the Texans, and they are no doubt the front runner by many to win the South this year, but I feel like we were saying similar sentiments last year to the Jaguars, that it was their division to lose, that Trevor Lawrence had taken a step forward under Doug Peterson, and now he was going to have a stranglehold grip on this division. Why is the pulse nationally different for the Texans, or why should it be viewed differently for the Texans going into 2024, that they would not fall victim to the same mistakes, struggles, and see another contender rise their ranks like happened to the Jaguars last year?
I mean, I guess the easy answer is there isn't. You can't say that it shouldn't happen or that it won't, because the pattern is there, and obviously we can talk all day about what the Texans should do. And we have this conversation a lot of times about younger teams that get to the Super Bowl and lose, right? We had it last year to a certain extent about the Detroit Lions, who got so close to going to the Super Bowl and then fell short. And we're always like, the popular refrain is, oh, they'll be back. They're young. They got some things to work out, and they'll be back to that level. There is just no guarantee. History is very clear that you just might not get back, actually. It's really hard to get back to the top of the mountain. So when you apply that thought process to Houston, you say, oh, there's all these reasons why, as you see them kind of ascending towards the end of the year and they have that dramatic, finish where they're able to win the division and they go to the playoffs, and you look at all these reasons why they should be continuing to pick up where they left off. That sounds great in the soundbite and it looks good on paper, but they've got to go play football games. They've got to prove it between the lines. And every year we see this happen. Teams go from worst to first. Teams have a key injury, and everything falls downhill from there. And so when those things happen every year all over the place, and like you said, no more obvious place than the AFC South in recent years, you have to keep that in the back of your mind and say, hey, yes, we realize that it makes sense for Houston to make this kind of jump, but history tells us it's not that simple. So they're going to have to go prove it. I still think Jacksonville has the talent to push them in that division. Again, I think Indy, if they're able to stay healthy, can do the same. I really do think Tennessee is kind of distant behind those three teams. But again, anything can happen. Nothing will surprise me because I've been, we've all been watching this game for far too long to know that the games aren't won on paper. But that's what we see now. They'll have to prove it when it really matters.
I've argued that last year Texans fans and C.J. Stroud experienced the rookie season that Colts fans wanted for Anthony Richardson. They wanted him to prove a lot of question marks and doubters wrong and end a division title drought, even though, admittedly it's longer here than it was for the Texans, but they were hoping for that same arc. To your point about not being surprised by anything, if the Colts were to do what the Texans did last year, which is be looked at as somewhat under the radar, somewhat of maybe a dark horse, over exceed those expectations and win the South, is health the biggest factor in that not happening? Or what would be, as you look at this Colts roster, the biggest reason why they could not usurp the Texans and end this 10-year division title drought?
Yeah, I think as far as it lies with the Colts, it's health. I think if they're able to stay healthy, they can do their part. They will be able to push, particularly with Anthony Richardson, if he's able to play the whole season. I think they will be in the best position they could possibly be to push Houston. I think the difference will be if Houston also stays healthy and if Houston also lives up to their expectations and continues to grow. Will they leave enough room for Indy to make the kind of push? Because if you look back at the way the division finished last year, it wasn't just that Houston finished strong. It was that Jacksonville fell off the planet, right? It was, they had that in the bag going into those last few weeks of the season, and then they completely fumbled it. They opened the door for Houston to be able to matter down the stretch, right? They gave them the opportunity to finish that. So it's got to happen both ways. Houston's going to have to underachieve a little bit to leave enough room for Indy to close that gap at the end of the year. But to say it would surprise me, it wouldn't surprise me at all, but those things would have to happen. They'll have to regress in Houston a little bit, and Indy will really have to stay healthy and maximize everything they have.
Luke Easterling is our guest. He's on the Express Pro Tire and Auto Guest Line. By the way, Luke, before we get back into the NFL, a year ago, I had to go back to school. I finished my degree, and one of the classes I took, and I literally thought to myself, I've got to be the only human being other than the classmates to have studied this kind of thing. I took a class that was a study of British horror films. Now,
let's go.
That's just right. It was totally scary. So my understanding is, a birdie told me that, and it wasn't the Oregon Duck. He was busy on the White River. But a birdie told me that you are into British murder mystery shows. Is this true?
It is, man. I'm telling you, I could do an entire segment on my favorite ones. I could talk your ear off all day long about the British murder mystery shows. We have special subscriptions on Amazon Prime to all the British TV channels so that we can watch all the good ones. I know far more about British television than I do about over here U.S. shows. I know I could talk your ear off way more about those shows than I can about Game of Thrones or anything.
I've watched a fair share of British comedies, and unless it involves Mr. Bean, the mystery to me is why they're considered to be comedies. But that's a whole different talk show, right?
Right. No, I see, and that's the thing. Comedy is a whole different beast over there. Comedy is a very different thing.
Totally.
I love the detective shows, the murder mysteries they have over there. They're very good at that.
Outstanding. Well, you can take the class that I took in college, by the way. I still have the notes. Luke, in terms of, so speaking of mysteries, the NFL team going into the 24 season that to you is the biggest mystery and has the widest chasm between what they could be and what they could not be. In other words, there's the biggest fluctuation of how their season can play out. The biggest enigma is who?
I think it's the Buffalo Bills. I really do. I think that, and I'll throw the Jets in there too. I know they're both in the same division, but I think last year we saw exactly why the Jets can be the biggest mystery. And I wrote about this at Athlon in the offseason going into the 2023 season. I said, everybody who's expecting the Jets to be the Bucs from 2020 is really, really on thin ice here, because it all rests on Aaron Rodgers not getting hurt. He's an older quarterback. He got hurt in off-season workouts. He had a calf strain, and then I think that contributed to the Achilles eventually. But that to me, the fact that they're basically running it back and saying, well, let's try again because all our eggs are in this basket, Aaron Rodgers is a year older, and he's coming off an Achilles injury. And so putting all those things in that basket again is really risky for them. And I think for the Bills, it's, can Josh Allen finally figure out the balance between the hero ball that he plays that gets him in trouble so much with the fact that he's got such a rare skill set in terms of his arm talent and his athleticism, his size, his ability to run the ball and chuck it down the field. He is such a special talent and a special player. But you lose Stephon Diggs. I know you have Keon Coleman. You made some additions there, but that defense has lost so much because of the salary cap, decisions that they have had to make. I think that, if Allen finally figures it out and becomes a more balanced quarterback where he can be really good at the things he does well and eliminate so many of those back-breaking and head-scratching mistakes that he makes down the field, and the Bills defense can have some young guys rise to the top and they can get some gems to kind of fill in where they've lost a lot of that veteran leadership. If they can stay healthy, I can see them being a dominant team. If Allen doesn't figure it out and that defense does regress because of the losses they've had, I could see them being a lot worse than we're used to seeing. And so both of those teams, I feel like, have really high ceilings but lower floors than I think a lot of people are appreciating right now.
Is Anthony Richardson still a mystery, or have we already come to the hook that seals it and you now know the way it's going to go?
I think there's still some mystery there. I think just because the sample size is so small, I think that we saw the flashes, we saw the ceiling, and I think I was as high as anybody on him coming out in that draft. I thought that any other draft that didn't necessarily have more experienced guys at the top. I know you could make an argument that Bryce Young, after the season he had, shouldn't have gone number one. But, if you go back to going into that draft, there was a lot of reasons why he should have. In any other draft, I feel like Richardson would have been an easy number one pick just because he's such a rare player. And so I think he answered that question like, yeah, he's special. He can really do this, and he can do it against NFL competition. But it's going to have to be a larger sample size, and he's going to have to prove he can stay healthy. So I still think there are enough questions there. But I think he's in a great scheme, and I think if he is able to stay healthy, I believe in his ability to do that consistently, to be that player that he was, that we saw in those few moments, those few games. I believe in that, but he's going to have to prove it over a whole season before we can say there's no mystery there.
Luke Easterling is our guest, covers the NFL for Athlon Sports, and he joins us on the Express Pro Tire and Auto guest line. Luke, the return of Joe Burrow, it's clear that's going to impact the AFC in a great deal. He's one of the top quarterbacks in the sport. But when you regionalize it, how does it impact having, in theory, a healthy Joe Burrow and a healthy Lamar Jackson in that intense battle for AFC North supremacy?
I mean, I think as a fan who doesn't have a dog in that fight, I'm thrilled about it, obviously, because I think that's a quarterback rivalry that is just going to be so fun to watch. And I think watching it happen in that division where they're going to be battling all season and hopefully both able to stay healthy, both obviously very different skill sets in the way they win a lot of the time. But I think I think they're kind of inverse in that Joe Burrow doesn't get enough credit for his mobility and his ability to create within and outside the pocket with his athleticism and still make plays down the field. And I think Lamar Jackson doesn't get enough credit for his ability to win from the pocket. I mean, I still see people talking the same tired narratives that we heard going into his draft class in 2018 about how he can't throw from the pocket. He's always running around and it's not, NFL traditional quarterback play. I just don't see that on the film. I mean, even going back to Louisville, there were so many instances of him being able to win from the pocket, and he has continued to get better at it at the NFL. But he is so much better from the pocket than people give him credit for. I think Burrow is so much better of an athlete and as a playmaker outside of the play structure than he gets credit for. And I'm really, as a football fan, just hoping both of those guys can stay healthy for a full season, because I think it's going to be great TV. It's going to be great football to watch. And I think both of those guys could go deep into the playoffs, and they have strong teams to rally around them. That's going to be a fun division to watch across the board.
Our guest is Luke Easterling. You can read his work at athlonsports.com. You were hearing him on the Express Pro Tire and Auto guest line. Luke, you ever watch, along with those British horror movies, you ever watch the, I think they're usually Japanese, the action shows they do called the Slippery Stairs, where they get these people to try to climb up stairs that are completely covered in ice? You ever seen this?
I think I've seen some clips here and there of shows like that, and they are definitely quite entertaining.
Yeah, people get like two steps from the top, and then they slip, and they slide all the way back down. To me, it is like the visual synopsis of the Jacksonville Jaguars last 3 years. Each time they start to get right towards the top, something slips, they slide all the way down, they got to restart all over again. the Jags are obviously relevant to people here because of the AFC South. We talked about Tennessee and Houston. Jacksonville, to me, has to be reckoned with because I am admittedly a fan of Trevor Lawrence's game. But is Lawrence ready to commit to that next step, and is Jacksonville ready to commit with him?
Well, I mean, financially they already have.
Well, yeah, you get what I'm saying. No, I'm talking about in terms of, their play. Obviously, is what I meant. Right. I think honestly, they're the bigger mystery to me. They're so frustrating to watch because, like you said, it does feel like a slippery stair situation. And with Lawrence, I mean, obviously they had no choice but to commit to that, right? That when I talked about that window earlier, that's what you commit to. If you don't figure it out within those first 4 or 5 seasons, then that rookie contract is up. If you think he can be the guy, you have to pay him because otherwise you have to go back to square one. And you used a number 1 overall pick on him, and you've seen the flashes. I don't think he's been the problem in Jacksonville. I think I saw a highlight reel the other day. You could call it a low light reel, but I saw one the other day with all of the touchdown passes that he threw last year that got dropped. And so I think that when you look at him play, he is not the problem. I think they've got to figure some other things out. The offensive line really hasn't been strong enough around him. He's had some playmakers, and I know Calvin Ridley going to Tennessee is going to hurt a little bit, but I think they made some solid additions there. First-round pick in Brian Thomas Jr., Gabe Davis is going to help out there. I think he has enough weapons. I think the biggest additions they made defensively, I think they'll be stronger. I think Eric Armstead was one of the most underrated signings of the offseason. I think he's going to be huge for that defensive front. And so I think, again, they're in that weird spot now where now you've committed that money in that cap space in terms of a percentage to your quarterback. So that means you have got to be able to draft well around him over the next 3 to 5 years if you want to try to win a championship. That's going to be the challenge for that front office and that coaching staff because I really don't think it's Lawrence's issue. I think he is every bit as talented and can be every bit as successful as we all expected him to be when he was drafted. I think it's the rest of that supporting cast, both in terms of coaching, the front office, and the rest of the roster on both sides of the ball. Those guys have to pick up their side of it if Jacksonville wants to be more consistent.
Luke, who's the surprise Lions, Texans, you name it? Who's the surprise dark horse team that could make some noise in 2024?
I think it's the Chicago Bears. I think it's not just about Caleb Williams. It's the fact, again, we talk about investing around. I think if I'm Justin Fields in Pittsburgh, I'm looking back at what Caleb Williams is going to be able to walk into in Chicago and be like, really, guys? I couldn't get that? You couldn't do that for me for 3 years? You know, you saddled me with that coaching staff that didn't want to play to my strengths, that wanted to put me as a round peg into a square hole in terms of the scheme. You gave me an awful offensive line, didn't have a lot of weapons until they finally brought in DJ Moore in that trade. They got them the number 1 pick, and then you ship me out of town so that you can draft my replacement and give him Keenan Allen and Rome Odunze and upgrade the offensive line with Ryan Bates and another offensive tackle. And Darnell Wright's going to keep growing. You traded for Montez Sweat. There's so many guys on that defensive side of the ball. Tyreek Stevenson, the corner, Jalen Johnson, obviously one of the best corners in the league. I think there's so much about that defense that is underrated and that will finally be as good as we remember some of those Bears defenses being in recent years. But, if Williams is anywhere close to as good as we think he can be, they brought in DeAndre Swift, they brought in Gerald Everett, they made so many veteran additions and again, 2 top 10 draft picks. So much of what they did. They drafted a punter in the 4th round, and it was actually a good pick. They drafted Torrey Taylor. I think he's going to make an impact this year, flipping fields, winning field position battles. I think it's going to be tough going there in the NFC North. But I think the Bears are going to be a team that nobody wants to play on both sides of the ball.
Luke, we appreciate the time as always. I'll let you get back to your British horror films. Is it films or TV shows, mystery shows, right? Not horror, but
mystery shows, right? Yeah. So it's the detective shows that they show over there. That's my wheelhouse.
Okay. Who's the number 1 like British mystery actor?
Man, I mean that's a tough one.
Are you going with modern shows or are you going with shows from yesteryear?
I mean, I'd go all over the place. There's a show called Endeavor that's like my favorite show of all time, which is actually like a past like prequel to the old Inspector Morse show from like the 90s. There's Vera with Brenda Blethyn, who was in a bunch of stuff. She was in Pride and Prejudice, and she was in a bunch of stuff. Midsummer Murders has been going for like 25 years, and that's still going. Like that's the same show that The best part of these shows, by the way, is that my Nana, who's 90 years old, watches all the same ones. So,
Beautiful.
I Facebook message with my Nana about all our favorite British murder mystery shows, and that's easily the best part.
Yeah, that's very cool. That is very cool. Tell Nana we said hi. I had a Nana, too. Tell Nana we said hi.
I will. She turns 90 in October, man. She's crushing life. She's doing a great job.
Happy birthday, Nana. I like it. Luke, we look forward to hopefully we'll have you on during the course of the season, man. Appreciate it.
Absolutely, guys. Thanks so much for having me.
All right, good stuff. Luke Easterling, again, athlonsports.com, where you can read. Speaking of football and Big Ten Media Days, kind of gives us a glimpse into the Big Ten in general. Not a lot of people high on Purdue, but, Jimmy, we're going to do an exercise next for Purdue and Indiana and take a look at what is up front for them. And it is still weird to think Washington, Oregon, USC, UCLA here for Big Ten Media Day, but that's why there's a huge inflatable duck downtown, which is awesome. But we'll get into that conversation next. I did always like this song. Great music video, by the way. Eddie Garrison selecting and spinning the hits here. My name is Jake Query. Jimmy Cook, the other voice you hear on this program. After a long, arduous process, they decided to name it Query and Company. And Eddie Garrison is the CEO of the company, Jimmy Cook, president of the company. And we have all kinds of listeners that are members of the company, which, again, nothing thrills me more than when I'm out and somebody says, man, I'm part of the company. That's what we love to hear. USA Today has put out their 2024 NFL record projections. I'm going to give the division without looking. Jimmy or Eddie, either one of you raise your hand and tell me which team you believe that USA Today and their writers have predicted to have the best record in the division. We will begin with the NFC East, and then we'll go to college football after that. NFC East, go ahead. Which one of you wants to make a guess? Don't all jump at once.
Green Bay Packers.
I will say the Philadelphia Eagles.
Dallas Cowboys.
Dallas Cowboys at 8-9 they have 2 games back behind the Philadelphia Eagles at 10-7. NFC South.
The Falcons.
Yes.
Atlanta Falcons 9-8 is correct. NFC North.
The Packers. No, they're the Lions. I'll go Lions.
Eddie?
Packers.
Green Bay Packers at 13-4. They have the Lions at 11-6. NFC West.
San Francisco.
Yeah, Niners.
San Francisco 49ers at 13-4. The Rams at 10-7. AFC East.
The Bills.
Eddie?
I will also go the Bills.
The Bills at 10-7, but the Jets at 12-5.
Of course.
The AFC North.
The Bengals.
Ravens.
Ravens at 10-7, and the Bengals at 11-6. The AFC West.
Chiefs.
Chargers.
The Chargers at 13-4, and
Oh,
the
my
Kansas City
God.
Chiefs at 9-8.
Oh my! What are we? Are you trolling me? Is that real?
The AFC South.
Oh my goodness!
AFC South.
When will they learn? So mad. You're not trolling me. That's real. That's really what that says.
It is.
I'm so livid. The Houston Texans.
Indianapolis Colts.
Indianapolis Colts at 11-6. The Houston Texans at 9-8.
I'm so mad.
AFC West. The Chiefs at 13-4. By the way. Okay, college football.
So you were trolling me.
It's not hard to do.
All right. Well, I'm not. I never argued that. I'm just saying that I would have totally believed that because the Chargers are always in vogue. Oh, it's the year they're going to win the West.
That's why I said them. That's why I said them.
I know.
Real quick, I'm going to read off the number of our listeners that truly care about that projection of the AFC West. Steve and Brenda.
Well,
that is the end of the list of our listeners that care about that projection.
75% of our listenership.
That is true.
You know.
That is actually an accurate point. Okay, now looking at the Big Ten, again, Big Ten Media Day right now. Eddie Garrison, I will let you select. We'll go alphabetically, actually, so I'm not going to let you select. Alphabetically here between Indiana and Purdue. I don't want to show any favoritism. We'll go alphabetically. But Indiana, and I think Indiana is going to be, we'll start with them. I think they're going to be improved. I do. I'm in on Curt Cignetti. I like the confidence. I like the roster turnover that they did. I think that they upgraded in some areas. They have a little more depth. But the schedule is the challenge. I'm going to go with it right now. You want to do Jimmy or Eddie? Which one of you wants to do Indiana? Don't all jump at once. Okay. I'm going to give you the game, and then, Jimmy, I want you to just simply say to me, win or loss.
All right.
Don't think about it. Instinct. You ready?
Got you.
Hosting Florida International.
Win.
Hosting Western Illinois.
Win.
At UCLA.
Loss.
Indiana returns to the Rose Bowl for the first time. Hosting Charlotte.
Win.
Hosting Maryland.
Loss.
At Northwestern.
Win.
Hosting Nebraska.
Win.
Hosting Washington.
Win.
At Michigan State.
Loss.
At Michigan. Or no, hosting Michigan.
Loss.
At Ohio State.
Loss.
Hosting Purdue.
Win.
You have the Indiana Fighting Hoosiers at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 wins and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 losses.
That's bowling.
They are bowling indeed. You were optimistic, I think, on a couple of those games, but it's hard to argue that.
I mean, I think that look, I'm willing to buy into a lot of what Curt Cignetti is selling, especially their non-conference schedule.
Okay.
I feel like there's a strong opportunity to build a really solid win foundation, and then you could trade a couple there. I know I said they lost at Michigan State. Maybe that's a game they actually win, but they end up losing to Washington. There's wiggle room. This feels a lot, Jake, like, and I don't know the exact side-by-side, so if I'm wrong on this, then feel free to correct me. I'm not saying it's going to be exact fool's gold, but with how Indiana's schedule shapes out in terms of avoiding so many of the real power players, Michigan and Ohio State are power players, to be certain, but not having to play Penn State, having so many games at home. It's like that year when IU beat Penn State at home, the makeup of this schedule. It feels like a real gift for them, the amount of home games and the amount of opponents they've had to avoid, where I think they could really be bowling and be beneficial of the schedule. Not to say they're not a good team. I think they do have a good group on their hands, but the schedule, I think, actually benefits them in a lot of ways.
Okay, now, the Boilermakers of Purdue. Eddie Garrison, you are up. I'm going to give you the game, and you simply tell me win or loss for Purdue. You ready?
Okay.
Okay. Hosting Indiana State.
Win.
Hosting Notre Dame.
Loss.
At Oregon State.
Loss.
They got a chainsaw at Oregon State. They fire up on third downs. If you go to a game there, by about the second quarter, you're like, okay, I get it. But I like Oregon State, and I feel bad. I really do feel bad for Oregon State. The Beaver of Oregon State kind of looks like the Oriole, where he's like, hey, just root for me. Everybody left us.
They're at, is it Washington State is the other one?
Yes.
They're just playing just the two of us at all their games all year. That's what they're doing.
That's right. All right, hosting Nebraska.
Nice job, Jimmy.
Thank you.
That is good. Hosting Nebraska.
I'll give them a win there. I think it'll be tough, but I think
at Illinois.
Loss.
Hosting Oregon.
Loss.
Hosting Northwestern.
Win.
At Ohio State.
Loss.
Hosting Penn State.
Loss.
At Michigan State.
Loss.
At Indiana.
Loss.
Eddie
Give
Garrison.
them one win, right?
You have the Purdue Fighting Boilermakers at 2.
2.
And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 2 and 8.
That might be good enough for them to retain their spot in the preseason media pool.
That's right, man. I'll tell you what.
That's 18th out of 18.
That schedule's tough.
It is.
And I don't think their recruiting was fantastic, but that Oregon game, I might buy tickets for that. Oregon and Purdue on a Friday night.
That'll be awesome.
On a Friday night, 8 o'clock on Fox, national television. I'm kind of down for that. I might just have to buy tickets for that.
Is there anywhere, I think the answer is no, but I've only been up to Purdue a couple of times. Is there anywhere, be it lake, be it pond, be it anywhere, where the Oregon Duck could be placed in West Lafayette, the big inflatable Oregon Duck?
The Wabash, of course.
All right, so it just travels along, makes the whole journey?
Yeah, why not? What if the Oregon Duck travels along with Oregon's schedule, but strictly on waterways the entire year? It could be done,
I'm
right?
here for it.
It'd be awesome.
Or, though, I would like to see if there's a spot where the waterway ends, it carried by helicopter. Just see the big duck floating in the sky like
bad.
You're carrying cargo.
That'd be pretty awesome, right? Of the 4, I know I've asked you this before. Of the 4 entrants to the Big Ten, which one do you kind of most excites you? Which one do you think is the coolest?
Oregon, because of the uniforms, the cachet there, the fun nature of the Ducks, is what my gut wants me to say. But there's something about USC and the Coliseum and getting the opportunity to see, it won't be this year for everybody, but getting the opportunity to see Big Ten schools playing on the road there on a regular basis is really cool. So I think I would, for football, I would say USC. In totality of the conference, I would say Oregon. What about you?
Boy, that's good. There's something about Oregon to me that just pops as like a brand and chic.
Yeah.
Washington as well.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think Washington's kind of underrated in basketball. They're obviously very good in football. You don't hear about them because they're up there in the corner.
College football playoff last year. I know Michael Penix carried a ton of that. So did DeBoer.
UCLA is pretty cool, though. I mean, to know that for fans to be able. Have you been to Pasadena? Have you been to the Rose Bowl?
I've not. No, it's on the list, but
it's
I've not.
Unbelievable. It's unreal, and just the area is so pretty,
mm-hmm.
and to know that you know this will eventually wear off. And I realize it's not realistically going to be every other year that your team is scheduled to go play in Pasadena. But the mystique of that, I mean, the first go-rounds of every team coming to play in Pasadena is going to be packed for the opponent.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how much people in Thousand Oaks are thrilled about, US or UCLA having to go play at Minnesota. But in terms of the home games, I mean, it's going to be tough for those schools because there's getting home field advantage is negated a little bit because so many people are going to travel to those places in the beginning.
Well, and
I don't see their fans traveling to. Our UCLA fans like, this is awesome. We get to go to Rutgers, right?
Memorial Stadium. It's been a dream.
Yeah, right.
No, probably not.
No,
but
actually, what they say is the Rock. We get to go to the Rock.
Yes.
See the world's largest flagpole. Hell yes.
How many people, though, in that part of the country and UCLA's fan base would they need to make the sacrifice of selling those tickets? Like, will it be just like a pocket of IU fans, or do you think that UCLA fans will jump at the opportunity of, oh man, they'll pay, we can get arm and a leg for these tickets?
Jimmy, I think out there the biggest challenge that those teams have, especially USC, well, UCLA also, those venues are off campus.
Yeah.
Right. So if you go to several years in a row when IndyCar was racing in Sonoma, we would go to the Cal Berkeley game on Saturday night. I saw Cal Berkeley play Texas. I saw Cal play. I'm trying to think here. I saw him play Texas. I saw him play Ole Miss one year. I can't remember the third year who it was that we saw them play. But and most of the fans there, it's just a different vibe. I mean, I'm talking to the guy next to me, and he's like, yeah, I've had season tickets for 20 years. And, he looks like he just got done at the Palo Alto Resort Golf Club. And he says, I live in the area, and it's always nice to just sit and have a beer and watch the game. I mean, it wasn't like a diehard.
Sure.
So, and for USC in particular, their biggest challenge is the fact that, and UCLA, but you got to go across town to go to the games. So I don't know how much. I mean, UCLA's fan attendance at home games recently has been absolutely abysmal. And now all of a sudden you're going to have all these people from Wisconsin going out to see them play.
Your bigger programs will invade. Like last year, going to Notre Dame, Ohio State game, like there was mini seas of Reds all over the place. Like that'll happen. I'm just curious how much is it an appointment destination trip for a Minnesota fan?
I think it is. I think it is. Just because, think about it. You live in Minnesota. You haven't seen warm weather in like 6 months.
Good point.
I mean, it's the Rose Bowl.
Yeah,
I mean, if you're a fan
it's a staple of the conference,
especially the traditional Big Ten schools,
right?
That have never had. I mean, when's the last time Minnesota played in the Rose Bowl, or Indiana, or I know Purdue did under Breeze, but that aspect of it factors in. USC fans don't even like the Coliseum, but it still is the Coliseum, and it's USC. What's the one thing they play after every dun dun dun? Dun 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 dun, like every third down, right?
Yeah.
It's just cool. Everything about it's cool.
It's awesome.
And I know you're a Notre Dame fan, so you probably don't like USC, but USC is cool.
I don't, but like I admire the swagger and the tradition of USC. Right. I don't care for their football program. No.
Now Stanford and Cal are going. They're in the ACC now. Is that right?
I think so.
Because nothing says Atlantic Coast Conference like Cal Berkeley, right?
Can we talk about also how like ACC commissioners and whatnot about the lawsuits that are ongoing with them, with Florida State and Clemson, and the idea of them staying up there at their podiums like, oh, this is the ACC. It's been around for 70 years. It's not going anywhere. Just happened with the Pac-12. Like, these conferences are no longer
understood,
immortal.
But they do have, Jimmy, the ACC, they have contractually.
Sure.
They are more ironclad than the other schools.
I wouldn't fight that. It's just that
I
level of arrogance.
I don't think it's arrogance. I think it's the factuality of it. You have to lay on something as your defense mechanism. And so they are saying, look, we're not going anywhere because if we are, we have the courts to back us up because we have contracts that were signed and agreed
You don't
to.
read it as a too big to fail type mantra.
No,
I
read it as I'm desperately clinging on to this so that nobody can come and take it, because then what would we have?
Yeah.
Especially if the ACC loses Clemson and Florida State from a football standpoint. It's like, come on out and watch Wake Forest Duke. Pitt's going to save us this year. We were talking about, by the way, when we were discussing that LeBron James will be the flag carrier, if that's the right word, for the United States in terms of the male representation at the opening ceremony of the Olympic Games. And I had said he is the most famous athlete representing the United States in the Olympics. Jeremiah asked the question, would Simone Biles be more famous? I don't believe so. I think LeBron James currently is the most famous athlete in the world. And I know that that's debatable because, and I certainly understand and appreciate and respect that Messi or Ronaldo or one of the big soccer stars, soccer is so massive, right? The difference would be the fact that LeBron James is known nearly 100% in the United States of America, and there's a slight chance that there may be older Americans not familiar with the soccer names. And then it's a draw in the rest of the world, largely.
Yeah, LeBron has that same, and I know it bugs people. Jake, I'm with you. I don't understand it. I mean, I have reasons for it, but I don't fully grasp it. LeBron has the same level of popularity, despite what people that don't like him might say, as Kobe did internationally, as Jordan did internationally. He's a lifetime brand ambassador of Nike. He is a face of one of the most popular sports in the world. He's one of the greatest basketball players of all time. He has that level of cachet. I would put him as the most famous athlete on not only Team USA, probably the most famous athlete competing in the Olympic Games as a whole.
Because somebody says Rafael Nadal, for example. Okay, Nadal is, and I love Rafael Nadal, and tennis has places where it is massive. But in Africa, I would give the tip of the cap to basketball over tennis.
Yeah.
Asia, I would say, is probably a draw, but maybe even slightly more towards basketball. And in the countries where they are a draw, basketball and tennis, LeBron to me is the bigger name. I mean,
yeah,
it's again, and I love Rafael Nadal. I mean, we're debating whether or not like Nike or Adidas is the bigger brand in some areas. I get it, but
it's not uncommon. It's a trend we've seen the last 40 years of basketball players, especially with the Olympic Games, being recognized as international superstars. It happened with the Dream Team. It most certainly happened with Michael Jordan. Kobe Bryant experienced that same exact level of popularity, and LeBron, regardless of when you want to say it started, is actively enjoying that same level of support and enthusiasm globally.
Stephen Holder going to join us next. Colts, where you just heard Kevin mention, they will be at Grand Park tomorrow for report day for the Colts. Stephen Holder reports with us next. It is exactly that for the Colts tomorrow. Report day for training camp and then everything getting underway on Thursday. Joining us now on the program, he is on the Express Pro Tire and Auto Guest line, and he will be putting plenty of mileage on the tires of his car. Talking about Stephen Holder, who will be covering all of it, and we appreciate his time. Stephen, I assume that you are ready to go. Question it, and it seems like for all intent and purposes, the Colts are ready to go because, quite frankly, there's not a lot of drama circling around them, which I guess is the good news, right?
I mean, what are we going to do with ourselves?
That's right.
We have a training camp so far, right, that doesn't have seemingly any drama. Of course, look, there's always the potential for the injury bug, and there's nothing anybody can do about that. But, yeah, I will say that this is not the time of year you want to be making news. You want to make your news when the games start to count. So from that perspective, they're winning right now, I would say, about the Colts. I mean, you look at the news yesterday of Jordan Love and his situation up in Green Bay, holdout, soft holdout. We have recent experience with that, right, here in Indianapolis last year about this time. But they don't have anything like that we're aware of, at least right now. And so, and just to be clear, I mean, we had some indications going into training camp last year that all was not well with Jonathan Taylor, and I had already reported that. So while that was somewhat a surprise, it wasn't a complete surprise. I don't have any indication of anything like that. Now, the health perspective, or from a health perspective, they seem in a pretty good place as well. So, yeah, I think right now you got to feel pretty good for late July at least.
Stephen, I asked Chap this earlier, the Dean Mike Chappell, of course, about the aspects of training camp having a sense of normalcy to it that hasn't been present in the last couple of years with no real contract drama. The health of Anthony Richardson will always be there, but most of this camp is going to be based on what happens on the field versus off the field issues. As a beat writer, how refreshing is that going into a camp?
It is refreshing. I mean, look, I will admit that when there's controversy, there's not a lot of doubt about what you're going to write on a given day. I will say It makes it easier from that perspective, but it's certainly less laborious and less stressful when you don't have to deal with those things. So, I do not anticipate being up late at night talking to sources on the phone about a contract dispute this time around. I don't anticipate that. The other thing, and I'm contrasting to last year, just to be clear,
right.
The other thing that I think is noteworthy, and this is actually the biggest thing, frankly, is, and my editor pointed this out to me the other day. He reminded me. He said, you don't have any quarterback questions for the first time, frankly, since Andrew Luck started, I guess, the 2016 season. But no, there were quarterback questions then too because he was hurt. So, I mean, really, it's the first time in like 8 or 9 years there's not a question about a quarterback or a quarterback change or a new starter. There's continuity at quarterback for the first time in about 7 or 8 years, and that is something that none of us can overstate. Like, I cannot overstate that in any form or fashion because, I mean, it's just too important. And in this league, that's the position that matters. So to not have questions there, and granted, look, that doesn't mean Anthony Richardson is the second coming of Patrick Mahomes. All we're saying is they know who their quarterback is, and they can work in tandem moving forward, understanding that. That means everything.
Stephen, your colleague at ESPN, and let me preface with this, each team has a writer like yourself that is assigned to a team. The one that you actually most pity heading into camp because it seems like their franchise is going to be nonstop drama like you went through a year ago during camp. That writer is which one that you want to send a case of beer?
Well, it's usually the Jets. So, and I don't just mean the Aaron Rodgers Jets. I mean, it's been the case for like 20 years, right? It's always a circus in New York. And we'll see. I mean, look, they have it might be the Jets even now. We'll see. I mean, Aaron Rodgers is due to make some news, I think. It's been at least 2 months. So I think he's probably due for some news. So we'll see what that entails. The other thing I would say is the Cowboys, just because, I mean, they have like 3 contract dilemmas hanging over their heads, including the freaking franchise quarterback. That is going to be a never-ending soap opera until they deal with it. And what I love about it, because it's not my problem, first of all, is what I love about it is that Dak Prescott is like, yeah, whatever happens, happens. And he's completely non-committal about anything, which I kind of like, you know what I'm saying? Because, again, it's not my problem, so I can kind of sit back and enjoy it. Todd Archer, I love you, but he's our long-time ESPN reporter in Dallas, but he's going to have a hell of a time, okay? Because this is going to be ugly and protracted and a never-ending story until something gets resolved. I mean, they got Micah Parsons, CeeDee Lamb, and certainly the quarterback. So good luck to him.
Okay, the other side of it would be this. Stephen Holder's our guest. He's from ESPN.com. He's on the Express Pro Tire and Auto Guest line. I want you to – we're going to close our eyes. We're going to do a little exercise here. We're thinking about, like, the distant future. It's now December, and I call you up and I say, let's go to a Pacers game, and we go to a Pacers game, and you say to me, Jake, you're not going to believe this, but I actually have an opportunity here to get away for a couple of weeks. And I say, what are you talking about? And you say, well, ESPN contacted me, and our writer that covers blank, insert team name, they need a second writer because nobody thought that team was going to be of any noise or anything worth writing about this year, and they have way surpassed expectation, and they're this year's Houston Texans, where here they are, and they need help covering them, and I'm thinking about going out there. Where are you headed?
That's a good one. I don't know if this will be a stunner necessarily, but I think the Chargers are the team that I would be wary of.
There you go, Jimmy. There you go. Is that because of Harbaugh or because you like Justin Herbert, or both?
Well, both. I mean, I think look at his history. Look at Harbaugh's history of getting the most out of his quarterbacks. I mean, we have no question about whether Justin Herbert is talented. We just haven't, I don't think, seen the best of Justin Herbert, right? And certainly the rest of the team as well. And I just know that when you look at Jim Harbaugh's history and the quarterbacks he's been tied to, I think they have all reached their ceilings with him. That's all I'm saying, you know. And I mean, we're talking about Alex Smith, we're talking about Andrew Luck, you know, you name them, right? They have reached their ceiling, in my view. With, oh, by the way, I mean, Colin Kaepernick, okay, Colin Kaepernick, who people still debate on whether he was even a good quarterback. I mean, I have my feelings, but that's not the point. I mean, I think he was better than he was given credit for. But I mean, this was a guy who was not a top 10 pick, and certainly had a lot of success with Jim Harbaugh. He has gotten the most out of all of his quarterbacks. I mean, I guess we could say that for J.J. McCarthy, for that matter. You know, so he continuously – I mean, that's a hell of a track record of doing the exact same thing. So I think he'll do it there. I also think that and I'm borrowing this from Frank Gore, who played for Jim Harbaugh and still raves about him to me all the time. He said to me recently, he said, that team is going to be the toughest team in the NFL. He said, watch. Now, that's his words, not mine. But the point that he's trying to make is that he is going to add an element of toughness to that team. I tend to believe it, because that 49ers team, they were as physical as they came, and they were a team that whether you won or lost against them, you were going to feel it on Monday morning. So I think there's something to that. And Jim Harbaugh, he just really adds an edge to your football team. That's a team with too much talent to be this ordinary, and I don't think that's going to last.
Stephen, I try my best to let my fanhoods not cloud my objectivity. Sometimes I fail, sometimes I succeed. Are you willing today to go on record and say whether or not you think the Chargers, like many of your national colleagues, not necessarily at ESPN, but all over the place, have said for the last decade, which is that the Chargers are going to win the AFC West this year?
No, I'm not.
Okay. All right.
No,
okay.
Absolutely not.
Okay.
And
The defense
and
rest.
my rationale is not very complicated.
Nor is mine, but for some reason they're always the in vogue pick.
Now who
Jake
is
punked me
picking
with it earlier?
Who is picking them to win the AFC West? I think people always say that they think they could take another step.
NFL Network for the last decade has always. I think this is the year. I think this is finally the year Justin Herbert takes a step forward.
Herbert
The Chargers
is
win the
good, though.
division.
Herbert
Herbert
is
is
good.
very good, and I agree with all of Steven's sentiment that if anybody's going to get the most out of him, it would be Harbaugh with that track record. I'm just saying Kansas City still exists. That's all I'm saying.
No, so I will say two things. Number one, I will stick up for my profession and just insert this caveat, which is to say that editors have a way of asking us to make really ridiculous decisions sometimes, and they're always like, "Oh, hey, let's be spicy,
Sure.
Let's go bold predictions."
LA is
I
a
love
big
when they
market.
come-
I get it. I understand.
Yeah, anytime the word bold prediction is in an email, I cringe because you know why? Because my name's on it, not theirs.
Yeah.
And I say, how about you make the bold prediction that you can be wrong about? Because I'm giving you the rope that you can hang me from. You know what I mean? Like you can hang me with. Like that's dumb. Why would I do that?
I could do the same for you here and say, do you have a bold prediction for the Colts for 2024?
Oh, thanks. I would say. So listen, I'll give you one. Is this bold? Tell me if this is bold.
Okay.
The Colts make the playoffs this year. Is that bold? That's not
I
bold.
think that's right on.
It's borderline bold.
I think
All
that's.
right, no.
I think that's.
I'll go bigger. They win the AFC South.
That is bold. Because no one knows who's going to win that division right now. And
No, you're right.
yeah, I would
I'll tell you what,
support that as bold.
So here's listen. It's not a promise. It's a prediction, right?
Exactly.
And probably a little bit of a silly.
And he's going to
prediction
cut it and
because-
save it, and we'll play it in January. But no, you're right. It's just,
Right.
it's just a prediction.
Steven,
But
here's
if
the
I have
way I
to-
look at it. Okay,
Well, go ahead.
you've got a hot dog, right?
Yeah.
And sitting before you at the condiment bar, you have ketchup, you have mustard, you have relish, and you have habanero sauce. If you were to get the habanero sauce, that's like picking the Tennessee Titans to win the division. You are out of your mind and probably are going to instantly regret it. Any of the other three,
because I was wondering where you were going with that.
any of the other three that you select, you are fairly safe without people judging you, because I think it's that equal amongst those three in between Indianapolis, Houston, and Jacksonville.
All right, I buy that, and I would say this. This is my perspective on it. Not totally disagreeing with you at all. I would add this. I think that you have a situation where there are those three teams. I think they could all make a very compelling case. Here's my case for the Colts, and it's this: they have, I think, the most untapped upside. In other words, I mean, they just started hitting their stride last year. They didn't have their quarterback. They've kept their group together. Those other teams, they all had challenges. All these three teams have challenges, but I think the Colts, they have the continuity, and the untapped upside is in the quarterback. He is the guy who, of all these teams that we're talking about, all three, is it not fair to say that he's the guy who could most elevate his team? That could be the biggest difference maker from last year.
I think he's one that puts more fear into the other three teams than any of the others do for their quarterback, because I think we have a better idea who Stroud and who Lawrence are going to be, and then
Right.
Levis is kind of the curveball, I guess. But Richardson, I think deep down, you're like, man, this could go high.
Right. I guess what I'm saying, I'm articulating this poorly. Here, you're right. I agree. And the only clarification I would add is this. Effectively, for the most part, we could almost pretend like he didn't play last year, because 4 games out of 17, right? I mean, we're talking about barely a quarter of the season. So if you look at newcomers, let's just play that game, right? Play this out. Let's consider him almost like a newcomer. If you look at newcomers in the division, there's no one else that scares you more. Period. There isn't, as far as I'm concerned, right? I mean, maybe others disagree. I don't think there would be anybody else. If he was a new player, you knew what he's capable of, because we saw a little bit last year.
Right.
He's almost like a new player. You put him on the field, he has the potential to elevate his team from last year's version to this year more than anybody else who's quote unquote new to the division. I don't know if I'm playing that out right or describing it appropriately, but I hope people are with me there.
I'll tell you one area that, in terms of like last year, and listen, Stephen Holder's our guest, by the way, from ESPN.com. The last year, Richardson, we saw the flashes. But they also had, I thought, we had the Taylor saga. Then you had Zach Moss. I liked the fact that those guys they brought different running styles to Indianapolis. And so, therefore, when you were looking at the Colts, you kind of had to defensively always be aware of which way they were going to hit you in the running game. Now that Moss is gone and Taylor is there, Stephen, Sermon to me is a poor man's Taylor. And I don't mean in terms of skill, but style. You don't deviate style as much now when you're taking Taylor out and giving him a breather, and you don't keep defenses honest with that 1-2 punch. Am I giving too much credit for what Moss did last year and what they lose there?
No, actually, I believe very strongly that it's a big loss, and here's where it's particularly big. Taylor I think for the last 2 years, you could say that injuries have bit him. There's no question about that. That was never a problem early in his career, but the position being what it is, it's almost inevitable at running back in the NFL, right? And so if that continues, they're going to run into a situation where they have to keep that running game going and the threat going with guys who are largely unproven. I do think that's problematic for them. Knowing that you had the veteran savvy of a Zach Moss back there who was proven and played the best football of his career last year, frankly, that was a hell of a comfort to have, and they no longer have that. So they're much more exposed there. So it is truly, truly incumbent and critical that Jonathan Taylor stay healthy this year. To your question more specifically about Trey Sermon being a little bit stylistically like Jonathan Taylor, and then so you not having that variety there, one thing I'd say is, look, we'll have to see what this guy can do. But on paper, theoretically, Evan Hull could give them a change of pace. He could be sort of a change of pace back, a guy who can catch balls out of the backfield. Tyler Goodson can as well, although he certainly didn't catch that bad pass from Gardner Minshew in Week 18 last year. We won't beleaguer the point. So I do think that's where they would get potentially the variation. It would be one or both of those two guys. So, but overall, I don't think there's anything wrong with really emphasizing the loss of Zach Moss and that it's an issue. There's no doubt about that.
By the way, I'm looking at the roster right now on your website, Stephen, on ESPN.com. Yeah. Let me tell you who I'm all in on. I'm all in. This is my Santiago de la Fuente of the Colts roster, okay? I'm all in, and shock the world here. And this happens every year. Every year in around November, there's some guy that we do a show on, and we say, what a story. Here's a guy that was parking cars a year ago, and then he got the phone call and the dream. This happens all the time, right? I don't even know how to say this guy's last name, but I'm going to say it anyway. Derek Slikwa. Am I saying that correctly? Wide receiver out of Ithaca. Okay.
I have no idea if you're saying it properly.
Listen, he's a wide receiver out of Ithaca, and I think Norman Dale was the coach at Ithaca before he came to Indiana. This guy's from Waterloo, New York. You don't even have a picture of him on the website. Number 13 wide receiver, 6'3", 215. He's number 13 in your program, number 1 in your heart. This guy's going to make the roster. I'm all in. Keep your eyes out. Derek Slykwa, Slywka. That YW combo right there alone is reason to keep him. This guy is going to make the roster and be a star. I'm telling you right now, Steven, if he makes the roster, when you write an article about this undrafted free agent out of Ithaca that makes the roster at the receiver position, I want full credit. Is that cool?
Hey, listen, you know what? I'll say it. Yeah, you heard it here first, okay? I'm on record, too. I'm also on record in saying there's no way in hell that's happening, but okay.
Now, why do you say that? Now, why do you say that? Come on, let's be honest. Did you really think that Dontrell Inman would be catching passes from Andrew Luck when that season began? No, you didn't. Well, you know what? Guess what? Boom.
But I'd seen Dontrell Inman catch passes from someone before.
Well, you're not watching Ithaca football. The power of the Northeast.
Hey, listen, I tell you what, if you're right, it's going to be a hell of a fun story. So I'm here for it, man. Let's do it. I'm here for it. I love the guy who was working at Target, like you said,
yes.
And stocking shelves.
I'm looking up his bio right now. Jimmy, go ahead. I'm going to read up on Derek's.
He's a former safety, by the way, turned wide receiver. He's a former safety at Ithaca.
Well, but he was turned wide receiver because have you seen his hands?
I have not actually.
Yeah, guy's unbelievable. I'm telling you, it's like he's got catcher's mitts he's got pillows for hands. Guy catches everything. They said we're wasting our time at safety here.
No, you did say he's a former safety. Well, I mean, hey, there may be an opportunity there.
Bingo. See, there you go. He's a buy one, get one, right?
We're not thinking big enough. We're thinking too small.
He started 15 of 34 games at Ithaca. Oh, wow. Look at this guy. He looks like, he looks like the little fella. Have you seen, now hold on, Stephen, have you seen Breaking Away? Or, okay, have you seen Bad News Bears, the original? This guy looks like Kelly Leak.
A long time ago, yes.
He's got like an armpit mustache and a mullet, and his hair's creased down the middle. I might have erred in picking him before seeing the actual photo. This is a mugshot for this guy. This guy has a mugshot. Derek Slikwa. I'm all in.
Take it all back is what you're saying.
Well, listen, at this point I'm all in, but I am questioning whether or not he is going to be a guy that makes the roster at the receiver position, because it kind of looks like he looks like the photo that you see at like Walmart that says don't take checks from this guy. That's what it's
okay.
You know what I mean?
That's yeah, I've seen those for sure. Listen, I will say this. If this guy makes the roster, you're going to go viral.
He's coming on the show. Derek Slikwa, I'm telling you, if you can do a feature on him, it'll be much appreciated. But you might want to do it soon.
But here's the problem. I'm going to suggest that we do the story, and my editor's going to hang up on it. That's the only problem.
Like I said, you might want to get it up quickly. If he makes it to Monday, I'll be impressed. I'll be impressed, right?
Look, I'm on it to the extent that I can be.
But, Stephen, here's the thing. Kidding aside, the beauty of this year's Colts season is that it affords us the time to joke about this kind of a thing, because it is rare. Yeah. This is uncharted territory for those of us that have covered this team for a long time, of not having a major drama storyline to discuss going in and to have familiarity of roster.
Yeah, there's no question. And it's not just – we've actually had a couple of different situations. We've had questions going in, and then questions have often been created once they get on the field. So I go back to 2021. If you recall, Carson Wentz gets hurt, like the third day of training camp, and then Quentin Nelson breaks his foot. The rest of the offensive line gets hurt. I mean, that thing was heading for disaster by the end of the first week. Okay, so yeah, we have seen some stuff. Okay, we have seen some stuff, and I think you are correct. I mean, this is likely the team with the fewest questions. Doesn't mean there aren't questions. I mean, look, we're going to talk at length about the secondary over the next few weeks. There's no doubt about that. But this is a team with some very clear strengths, a team with a quarterback with a lot of upside. They've got, I think, their offensive skill positions generally. I think they feel more stable and more settled at that position now. It doesn't mean they're elite, but it feels like they have a workable amount of talent. And defensively, I really like them up in the front seven for sure. I really, really like the front seven. I mean, that is as good a front seven as you'll find most places. So there's a lot to love about this team, and I feel like we have fewer questions about this team than most teams that I've covered in Indianapolis. This is going to be, I think, my 11th season. Now, that doesn't mean they're the best team that they've had in that stretch, or that they have the most talent. That's not what I'm saying. I just think they have, overall, top to bottom, they probably have the fewest questions. And that's really an important thing, because so much of this league, winning and losing, is about, what are your holes? What are the holes in your roster, and can you survive those holes? They don't have that many, so that's a good thing. It's a very, very good thing to hold on to.
By the way, I'd like to announce this. Go ahead, Eddie. Stephen, I don't know if you can hear, but that is the breaking news sounder, and we do have breaking news here. Derek Slikwa just picked up a Twitter follower because I found him on the X Twitter, and he now has, are you ready for this? He now has 543 followers.
Hey, man, we're on the way up. Let's go.
I am all in. Now, I find this to be, quite truthfully, a little bit problematic in the fact that if you look at his bio on the X Twitter for Derek Slikwa, his bio lists himself as Defensive back JUCO product All-American. For business inquiries, contact Perez Sports SJP.
When's his last tweet?
His last tweet was, now that's the other thing that's interesting. His last tweet is 17 hours ago, and it's him, showing himself doing backward running drills. Which, if you're trying out for wide receiver now, see, here's the thing. Now, he does have others showing him getting burst off the line as a receiver. In his pre-draft NFL draft, now he's listed as a prospect grade of 5.68, candidate for bottom of roster or practice squad. Level of competition could give teams pause, but his impressive pro day and game tape suggests he has a chance.
You know what I got out of this? I'm intrigued, like legitimately intrigued. He could be a secret weapon.
I'm telling you. Listen.
They're grooming this guy to be a starting safety, aren't they?
Your editor's going to wait a little longer before he hangs up now? He's going to give pause?
But again, kidding aside, Steven, if there is a roster in the NFL, his agent must be a genius. Because if there's a roster in the NFL where you could possibly break through at the defensive back position, kidding aside, it probably is the Colts, is it not?
I mean, look, they're two things. They're open-minded, right? I mean, they've converted a couple of safeties to linebackers. I mean, you got Ronnie Harrison, for example. He's done that. They have another one, Jalen Carles, that is changing positions, a draft pick from this year. So that's the first thing. They have a record of being at least open-minded about players, right? And then secondly, yeah, like you said, they've got like 3 safeties who've actually ever played. So, yes, that's true. I would agree.
I'm telling you. When this guy, go out and buy your jersey now, right?
Listen, beat the crowds.
I did have a buddy when I was working at the cigar store. My buddy went out and paid like $300 for a custom-made Arnold Mickens jersey. Mickens was a local kid, and it was really nice. And literally the day after he wore it for the first time, Mickens got released. And I thought, yeah, so
such a sad story.
I might be a little hesitant on my Slykewood jersey. Okay, Steven, last thing before we let you go. Back to training camp. Colts reporting tomorrow. Things getting underway on Thursday. The question that I might have asked you, I've asked a couple, but I want to get your insight on this. If you go back a year ago, Shane Steichen was a rookie head coach. He is now a year into it. The things in terms of the Colts' approach that they did a year ago under Shane Steichen that perhaps he alters, or he thinks, my maturation as a coach, I should do this differently. Is there anything that comes to mind, or was he good enough as a rookie where you say, if it ain't broke, don't fix it?
So I think, excuse me, I think he's going to be a little more relaxed. That doesn't work because he's not relaxed. But he won't be as hardcore, I think, in terms of being inflexible about. For example, I'll give you an example. So in the off season this year, they cut back their off season program by about a week, and he was actually pretty relaxed about it and pretty open minded, pretty easygoing. And this is a guy who, as you know, like when it's time to play, he's like, we're all in. It's competition. Everything matters. You know, and he actually was able to kind of take a step back and take a breather and trust his veteran players that they would have themselves prepared. So I think you're going to see a training camp that reflects that. He's not going to be sort of over the top in long practices and go crazy. He's despite his reputation, earned reputation for being really hardcore and just sort of like, eating up with beating people, which is great. I think he also has an open-minded side to him to allow guys to kind of like, just trust them to be prepared, et cetera. And so I think you'll see that. I really do think you will. And he's already shown signs of that. And I've had conversations with him that I thought were really refreshing, where he was like, he's pretty comfortable in where they are right now. So that's a good thing. I think that's a good balance to have. He's got the competitive side of him, but he can also say, you know what, we're good. I'll trust you guys. Have an early afternoon, et cetera, et cetera.
By the way, Derek Slykewood was signed to the roster on June 6th when they placed cornerback Clay Fields. Oh, no, I'm sorry. They signed Clay Fields as well, but they placed safety Daniel Scott on IR.
The plot thickens.
Telling you.
That sounds like a tinfoil hat comment to me.
Hey, listen, you know what? I've asked lots of questions that were conspiracy-like over the years. Most of the time, I got stupid answers because I asked stupid questions. But every once in a while, I get an answer that says, I'm really glad I asked that question. So
Sorry, I brought it up because we used to have sound around here, but apparently we don't have that anymore.
Well, we used to have a guy that wasn't eating lunch during the show, right? All right, Stephen, tomorrow everything gets underway. We will be up there. As a matter of fact, I've got to look at the dates, but I know that,
8-5.
Obviously, what is that?
We're out there August 5th.
All right, August 5th, we're going to rope you in live, Stephen. Sound good? Not that you're not live now, but on site.
yeah, let's do it. Let's do it.
All right, appreciate it, Stephen. We'll see you soon, all right?
All right, see you guys.
Stephen Holder from ESPN.com. So what you're saying, Jimmy, is that you think that the fact that I noticed, and again, my investigative skills, it's incredible. My instincts are incredible in terms of the things that I point out, and then they come to fruition, and people go, that guy is a genius. Like when Santiago de la Fuente was running fourth in one of the majors, and people were like, that guy's incredible. And then they played hole 2, and things started to slide a little bit. But Derek Slikwa, the fact that he was signed on a day that they had to put a safety on IR, they list him as a receiver.
Yeah.
They list him as a receiver, right?
Yeah.
Just putting him in another room where people don't notice, and then whoop, there he comes, and all of a sudden, secret weapon now at an area that is one of question. You're saying that sounds like a tinfoil hat.
I am.
Better late than never.
The truth is
right?
out there, Jake.
I'm just telling you. I want people on board. It's jersey number 13. If you got a Vanderjagt jersey, no problem. A T.Y. Hilton jersey, no problem. Just put tape over the back of it. SLYWKA. If I see you on August 5th wearing a Derek Slikwa jersey, we are going immediately over to Quack Daddy Donuts, and I'm buying donuts and coffee for everybody. Got it?
All right. Let's make it happen.
There we go. By the way, Jimmy's picks coming up here in about 15 minutes. Eddie Garrison has reached into his bag of goodies, and in doing so, Eddie, you have decided that you've pulled out how many tickets for the Indiana State Fair?
Not 4 watermelon gummies. That was unfortunate. 4 tickets to the State Fair.
4 tickets to the great Indiana State Fair, which, by the way, do you have the breaking news sounder, Eddie Garrison? Breaking news, we will be taking this show on the road. Not only on the 5th of August will we be at Colts training camp, but just a few days after that, on August the 8th, easy to remember, 8-8, we will be doing our show from the Dairy Bar.
Awesome.
For the American Dairy Association of Indiana. You will be able to get one of your coveted strawberry milkshakes. I will get a Swiss grilled cheese sandwich. Eddie, we will bring you back a chocolate milkshake if you'd like, or a chocolate milk if you'd like, or a chocolate milk or cheese sticks, or whatever it is that you might.
Well, you won't bring me back anything. It's okay.
Why not?
Just because I know how you two operate.
No, I'll do that.
Whoa.
Yeah, what was that all about? That seemed passive aggressive.
What do you mean?
What fashion are we giving away these tickets, Eddie?
We'll do some show trivia.
Show trivia. So you call in this program right now at 239-1070. And then when you call in, what we do is simple, and you get to pick any of the 3 of us. You could pick Jimmy, you could pick Eddie, you could pick myself. My name is Jake. And then we will present to you a trivia question about one of the other 2 that has been answered on the show in some way, shape, or form. Something about one of the other 2 to justify and verify that you are indeed a listener of this program. But 239-1070 is the number that you need to call. We have how many phone lines, Eddie, that are available for calling in?
6.
There are 6 available phone lines, and
2 just hung up.
yeah,
So we're down to 3.
What was up with that?
Now we're down to 4.
Impatience.
Up to 4. Sorry.
Society these days.
It doesn't seem like people are listening because nobody's called. 239-1070. I'm kidding. We do have phone calls. Who would you like to take here, roulette style, Eddie?
I'll let Jimmy pick.
Jimmy, pick a number.
3.
Number 3. We will go roulette style. You are on the air right now live. Your name is what? Ask Bill.
Hello there.
I just wanted to say that I think Jake's the best one on the show, and I hope he gives me tickets. Thanks, Bill. Appreciate it, but we're giving away tickets through trivia. So let's go to 1 or 2. Who do we have,
Dose.
Eddie? Number 2, you
Where
are
do
on
you-
the air right now. Your name is what, caller number 2?
This is Dennis.
Dennis the Menace on line number 2. Dennis, I appreciate your calling in the program. You're a regular listener of the show, Dennis?
I am the director of aggregate.
I like that. Now, aggregate to me is a little intimidating because partially I think that means, yes! I
Man.
love that. I was thinking you were like in charge of agriculture. What is aggregate again, Dennis? Explain exactly what that entails.
I actually drive a dump truck, and I'm heading to Shelby Materials to drop off
Beautiful.
stone so they can make cement.
That is awesome. Much appreciated. So you are where right now? Can you give us a quick traffic report?
It's a little heavy. I'm on 465 westbound, getting ready to get off on Crawfordsville Road.
Okay, and then also, if you could real quick, Dennis, because we're landlocked here, we don't have a window. Is it still nice outside?
It is nice. Clouding up a little bit, but it's still beautiful.
Okay. Now, Dennis, who are you going to take to the State Fair with the tickets should you win them?
Probably one of my 8 grandchildren.
Oh, that's beautiful. Absolutely great. All right, so Dennis, which of the 3 of us would you like that will be asking you a question that entails checking in on how often you listen to the program?
We'll go with yourself.
Okay. Would you like me to ask you a question about Eddie or about Jimmy?
Let's go, Jimmy.
Jimmy, okay, a question about Jimmy Cook. Here we go. Recently, Jimmy missed a day of work, and it was not a huge area of concern, but he came back and divulged the fact that the reason he missed a day at work is because of the fact that he was helping out his wife with a medical situation. Do you know what the situation was or why it would be of concern above just being an otherwise normal procedure?
Does it have anything to her with her being with child?
All right, Dennis, that qualifies. Indeed, Jimmy's wife had to have her appendix removed, which was of slight curveball because she is, in fact, carrying the first of the family outside of Jimmy and his wife. So you are correct.
Indeed.
And Dennis the
Well done,
Menace.
Dennis.
Right on.
Can you give us a big horn blast on the way out? And if you're on 465 and you're in front of Dennis, don't be concerned by this, and I don't want to create road rage, but go ahead and just give us one big blast.
Well, I tell you what'll really make it better, I'm getting ready to go under the bridge on Crawfordsville Road,
buddy.
so give me about 1 second.
Buddy, this will echo. Yes! Yeah! All right, Dennis. Drive carefully and enjoy taking the grandkids. Now, I don't know how he's going to divvy up which grandkids he takes.
Yeah, I
he
know.
might have to buy a couple of extra tickets.
He might
right?
have to have trivia questions of his own being asked there.
I was going to say, that is fabulous. That's how we do our ticket giveaway with getting to know your listener. Dennis, one of the fun members of the company. Okay, we come back. Jimmy, you've got plays of the day, right?
Of course.
All right, we will do that, and we will preview what's coming up. John will be up next at the top of the hour as well. It's Query & Company. Thanks for listening here on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
We got a little mix in today's plays of the day. First, we start with baseball. We'll take the Baltimore Orioles.
Hey, root for me.
AKA cute fella to win on the money line over the Miami
Marlins today. Do you know how much
Marlins
it makes
today.
me happy to know that that's grown into something that even Eddie enjoys doing?
It's easier for me than Brooklyn, but I still appreciate both. All the same. We'll take them to win over Eddie's Miami Marlins tonight. First pitch at 6:40. A little bit later, we'll take the Texas Rangers to win on the money line over the Chicago White Sox as they continue to host them down in Texas. Last one for you. As the Dodgers and Giants begin a series, we will take L.A. to win on the money line over San Francisco. We'll shift out of baseball now and go to historic Kinkle Fieldhouse tonight, where IU's alumni team Assembly Ball takes on Eberline Drive. We will take the Yogi Ferrell-led Assembly Ball to win outright and move out of the Midwest Regional.
You can wager on that?
You can. It's a beautiful thing.
1-800-9 with it.
Speed dial, baby. Any bets for you?
Yes, I do have bets, Jimmy.
Let's go then.
Okay. I will be taking the Baltimore Orioles -1.5. I don't need that juiced money line. Give me the -1.5. They're taking on one of the worst offensive and pitching staffs in all of baseball, as we've noted routinely with the Miami Marlins. Plus, I think it's a get-back game. Taking the Atlanta Braves -1.5 against the Cincinnati Reds. Chris Sale on the mound. Reds have struggled against lefties, and Nick Martinez has been dog water when he starts. So
Dog water.
I will take Chris Sale and the Braves at -1.5.
I endorse dog water. I'm a very big fan of throwing dog water into casual conversation. It gets your point across without having to be too vulgar, Jake.
Is the duck still out on the river?
I hope so. Did you see somebody zoomed in on one of the early pictures of the duck, and it looks like he's about to eat some poor runner that's running across the bridge?
That is beautiful.
Oh, that's great. The Oregon
Is
duck
that your
can
last
stay.
pick there, Eddie?
Yep.
I interrupted you.
You're good.
The Oregon duck can stay as long as it wants there. I'm all
pretty
here
awesome.
for it.
It is pretty awesome. I have a question for you guys. Speaking of summertime and competitions.
Okay.
Did I hear a groan with that?
I laughed because I tried to put the duck back up to my camera, but we switched to a wide shot on the YouTube
Gotcha.
chat, and so no one saw it.
Summer programming on television
Mm-hmm.
is obviously, a lot of the big programs take the summer off.
It's game shows usually is what you
Correct.
like in the
A lot
summer.
of game shows.
Mhm.
Now, one of the shows that I've never really gotten into, but I have to admit I enjoy it because it's a nice option when there's kind of nothing else going on. And for the most part, it's entertaining in terms of I don't know, it's a fun show to watch. But I have questions.
Big Brother.
No.
American Ninja Warrior.
Close. Kind of close.
Okay.
Have you noticed this about these shows? American Ninja Warrior falls into this category. That diving show they had where Louis Anderson almost died comes to mind. They all have the same lighting.
Yes.
It's like real dark, and then there's a lot of blue and like plastic glass type stuff.
Yeah.
But the show that, and it's been on for a while, it's enjoyable to watch and entertaining, is America's Got Talent. Okay? I do enjoy it because the people that come out, and some of them you're like, okay, it's supposed to be, if I'm not mistaken, and I've never watched like a full season of it, if I'm not mistaken, the grand prize winner eventually gets like a show in Vegas maybe.
That's what it used to be. I don't know if it is now, but it's like a residency in Vegas.
Maybe now it's just $1 million.
Yeah.
A lot of it, I'm like, okay, this feels like auditions for halftime shows.
They get their face put on the sphere now. That's
cool, right? But it does feel like, for a lot of them, it's like, okay, well, this feels like a halftime show.
Yeah.
And some of them, but here are the two things that are confusing to me, and somebody can fill me in if they're a regular watcher of the program.
How's our Hooser doing?
Well, okay,
Do we know?
This leads to my first question. And somebody that understands and watches America's Got Talent, send me a text and explain this to me. My number is 523-9288. That's a 317 area code, 523-9288. Or if you just want to verify that you're still listening, that's great too. At 317-523-9288. The beginning of America's Got Talent season, we had the guy from Terre Haute who was the custodian at a middle school that came out and did an incredible rendition of Journey's Don't Stop Believin', and they gave him the yellow ticket, which means that he advances past whatever rounds, like straight to the finals. But every time I'm watching now, it's still auditions. And I'm confused. When does it move on from this?
Yeah, so
where do they go from here?
I can answer that for you if you want.
Okay.
Apparently, per their Wikipedia page, the this evening is the last night of auditions. Auditions 8.
And then what happens? Like how many people were advanced?
It's a great question.
And
That
then
part I can't help you with.
Then the second question I have is this. I watched last night, and there were two guys that were very entertaining, and they were funny, and they were, I believe, Japanese. They didn't speak very good English, and they did just kind of a skit where they dress up like animals, and the judges seemed to love it. And then they had a guy from, I believe it was Argentina, that tried to sing a song, but he couldn't sing it because he didn't know English, and so they let him go, and then he came back and did kind of more of a salsa-type song, and he was really good, and they put him through. And I don't mean this in a derogatory sense at all, but I'm curious about it. The name of the show is America's Got Talent. Shouldn't that mean that everybody that is on it is somebody who is talented and in America?
You're asking a question that I can't.
Can you? Don't you have to be 35 and American born to win this competition? I don't. It seems odd to me that if the name of the show is America's Got Talent, that means that you are scanning America for talented people.
It might be like putting together Olympic rosters where if your great-great-grandfather has American ties and you're
it feels that way, right?
Fine. Yeah.
I mean, Trey Lyles is on Team Canada because his mom is Canadian or whatever. But and I don't mean that. I have no problem with it. I enjoy watching these people from other countries. But I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute, could they not go on Singapore's Got Talent? Because they have other variations.
There are other Got Talents.
There's Britain's Got Talent. I mean, obviously Simon
I think that
Cowell's
was the
British.
original one, if I'm not mistaken.
And you know what? Like Simon Cowell, to me, kind of makes the show. I don't know. He seems kind of cool to me, but
maybe America's Got Talent was the first. Because it says that America's Got Talent premiered on June 21st, 2006, after plans for a British edition were suspended. So maybe they were first. But anyway, yeah, there are other variations of it all across the globe.
But it seems weird to me. Like there was a guy also. There was a German guy on there yesterday as well. Again, I'm all for all that, but then just call it like, whatever, America, the talent show in America or whatever. Am I off base? Am I out of my mind here for?
I mean, I don't disagree with what you're saying, but from what I've briefly read in the last 90 seconds, it appears that they welcome all participants, whether you are from America or not.
Okay. Here's an interesting tidbit as well. I'm going to ask J&V this because it's right in his wheelhouse. John, I'm not going to say the name of the establishment because I don't want to get anybody in trouble, but I was walking around downtown last night. Yeah. My buddy Mike Byron's dad, Dan Byron, was awarded the Sagamore of the Wabash, the highest civilian award, that you can receive from the governor. And I went to the reception. It was wonderful. Congratulations to Dan, who is probably the foremost leader of protection of the First Amendment in the state of Indiana. And as I was walking back, I ran into somebody on the street who it was very clear works for one of the hotels downtown.
Yes.
And I said to them, okay, give me the celebrity that was the coolest and give me the celebrity
was it William?
That was the biggest jerk.
Was it the William at the Conrad? The concierge over there? Did I pronounce that right, concierge?
I don't know the person's name, nor.
Great guy. Listens every single day.
Okay.
Right? Probably listening right now.
So,
great guy.
He was confused by the question, and I said, I don't mean the coolest person. What do we got there? What's?
Hey, I don't have headphones on. Explain to me what's happening.
I don't know. All of a sudden, something from Britain's Got Talent started playing.
That would be James setting the clipboard down on the mouse and it hit something.
Okay.
James.
So at any rate,
James, you can't blank up 2 shows today, okay?
So what I said was not the coolest person that stayed here, but the one of famous people that stayed here, the one that was the coolest to you and to the staff. And they gave me one answer, and then I said, who was the biggest D-bag? And they gave me another answer.
Oh, really?
So I thought you'd find this of interest. Do you want to guess the D-bag?
Guess the D-bag.
They were like, could not have been a bigger jerk.
I don't know. Who was that?
Chris Angel.
Chris Angel.
The magician.
Yep.
The coolest one?
Mm-hmm.
It's like the guy was so cool, so nice to everybody, low maintenance, whatever else. John Stamos.
I can see that.
John Stamos, I said, was totally cool.
I can see the Chris Angel thing, too. Was that he was here, like, for the Ursay thing a couple of years ago, right? I think for the Ursay concert, I think he performed some kind of thing at Lucas Oil.
I thought maybe he didn't pay, just disappeared. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think it's William that's the concierge at the Conrad, and he listens to all the shows here.
What do you got upcoming on the big program?
We go, Greg. Duraco's on from Jacksonville. We're going to get a look-see at the AFC South because report date is tomorrow for the Colts. And Lance McAllister of the big one in Cincinnati. They got a win last night, so I don't know if that'll take some of the rip job off that we're going to give the Reds, but we'll talk a little baseball and other stuff and Joe Burrow. So
you know what else you should do?
Eddie over there get a nice little sports arousal if we talk about the Bengals.
Randomly hit some buttons and see what kind of music plays
no,
as
hey,
well.
James, why don't you go ahead and hit something over there? You got any Pantera ready to rock?
What station was that you fired through, though?
That was the Alt WKRP.
Was it?
Yeah, it was the WKRP song.
Oh, that was mine for my system.
Yes.
Educate and entertain,
yeah,
baby.
that's the ending for the JMV Takeover that I play sometimes. You know the ending of WKRP?
Right.
Where they had, the Mary Tyler Moore cat meow at the end, right?
Educate and entertain, baby.
Sit, Ubu, sit.
Good dog.
Woof. That's the way they end family ties. All right, we're back at noon tomorrow. John's up next. Thanks for listening to Query & Company.